Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Nick Frazier here with you. A nice little cool, rainy summer day. And DMase, you said it, with the Titans opening training camp, this might be a good day to be outside and doing a conditioning test. It's less than 80 degrees out there.
This might be good for Big Sweat. He ain't going to be sweating as much, you know.
You might not sweat as much today.
You might not sweat as much because it's raining. It's going to be raining the whole week, which means the temperature is going to be down just a tad bit. It's not going to be as hot.
What about that humidity?
I sound like a meteorologist over here. The humidity will be, but they'll probably go in to run it anyway, which is honestly a little bit better too because you don't have the give of the grass, you know, and it may be a little bit better. I'm trying to figure out, did we ever run our tests inside? Hell no, probably didn't. It was probably 90 degrees outside and the humidity was at, you know, 1,000,000 and we had to run that test. But yeah, this is a good day to run the test, especially for Sweat. Because I know we talked about this yesterday briefly, but he's one of the guys that need to pass the test on day one. He is the only guy that really needs to pass the test on day one because everybody's going to be looking at him. I didn't start the conversation out on Devondre Sweat. Tvondre Sweat. I always want to say Devondre. Tvondre Sweat. I started the conversation on Devondre, and look where we're headed now. So I don't know why I started that conversation, maybe because it's raining outside, and I know they got to run the test today. You know how it feels? Like, Willie, I hate to just kind of commandeer this show for the next couple of seconds here on a minute.
You're on a roll.
Man, you know how anxious guys were to run that damn test?
Look, I know because
you've been through it.
My experience with Vanderbilt basketball, you had to run a 6-minute mile to qualify for practice. That was our conditioning.
We had to do it in college.
Had to run a 6-minute mile, and I don't care if you were 6'1" or 7'1".
Yeah, it was hard.
And those big 7-footers, man, you want to talk about some stress. Those guys, those big lumbering, we call them the footers, you know, the 7-footers. That wasn't easy for those guys to get 6-minute miles.
Oh,
but
no.
They had to do it. And then you had a tough time where if you could get a certain amount, you could get out of some of the post-practice sprints.
Yeah.
The first few days, that was like money in the bank.
Oh, yeah.
Those first few practices are tough. So yes, I was never a guy that struggled with that stuff, but there were several guys on our team. They were great players. They were not into that. The preseason conditioning.
Yeah, the
that wasn't their thing.
Like
I didn't come here. I came here to ball. I didn't come here to run a mile. I'm not a mile runner.
Wow.
And they were like, yeah, exactly. Like, why do we have to do this? But the anxiety for some of those guys was much more stressful than actually doing the test.
Exactly.
I'm sure it's like that for some of the
because
guys.
once you start running the test, it's like okay, let's just do it.
Yeah.
But before, as you're getting your shoes on and you're in the locker room, and it's just like, I don't feel like, and then you hear, all right, let's go. And then you're just like, do I really got to run this? And then your heart drops a little bit. It's like, then you get into it's like, but here's the bad part about it. You got to practice the next day. And if you did pass the test, you had to run it that morning. And you know what else you had to do? You had to practice too. So I would suggest that Big Sweat, if you don't want to have double and triple duties, man, just pass the test today because y'all ain't practicing today. You pass it today, you get the rest the whole day, and then tomorrow you practice. You don't practice today. You don't pass it today. You got to take it tomorrow, and you got to practice. So just get it over with, man. I know he'll pass it. I know. Because everybody, all eyes are going to, well, not all eyes. They are going to be waiting to see who passed the test.
Right. And look, that young man in particular.
Exactly.
He has been hearing since the time he was drafted, but definitely since
he was hearing about
day.
this in college.
Yeah. And I'm sure. So he's probably been through this before.
Exactly.
I don't know if his coaches at Texas just said, you didn't pass? Oh, don't worry about it. Just keep coming. Like there are some coaches that really don't care about that stuff. But
of course.
It's a matter. Some coaches, it's a matter of just mentally putting you through the test.
Exactly.
It's mentally as much as physically. We want you to be in shape, but also we want you to push yourself. We want to see you push yourself. And we want the team as a group to be working towards a goal. We're all paying the price to be a good team. That's part of it, as well as just your physical health. But that that young man knows that if he doesn't do well on that,
exactly,
it's going to be a big source of noise for him, the coaches, the entire team. I'm sure that weighs on him as much as people like Jared and who, like Jared set the table. We're going to find out. We're going to find, and I get that, right? And we're all doing that. But you have to look at this guy as a human, right?
Yeah.
And it is not. I'm sure
that test is
there are guys.
It's not easy.
Like I said, there are guys that I have seen that are great players that they just do not do well in that stuff, right? And it's not all because they're not trying, right? I can see sometimes the assumption is if he doesn't do the test well, he's not trying.
Exactly.
He must not have worked very hard. And that's not always the case. It might be, but I'm not there at his workouts. I don't know what the guy does every day.
You can tell.
So I don't know.
You can tell if a guy is out of shape and didn't pass the test, or the guy's in shape, but he just didn't pass it that first time. You can really
and
tell.
What is the test, right?
Exactly.
I can maneuver the test based on the position.
Of course.
So that was some of the basketball players like, why do we all have to run 6 minutes? Like it's different for a 6'10" guy.
Exactly.
As opposed to
guy should be 7 minutes.
Yeah.
He should be a 7-minute guy. But everybody got to be on the same plane. Everybody got to be on the same surface. There's no I team, but there's damn sure me.
So I don't know, but I would guess that if the test is the same, it might be easier for a defensive back than a defensive lineman test.
Yeah. But then they get
Did everybody do it when you were playing? Did all the positions do something similar, or was it?
Yeah, we all ran. Yeah, we all ran the 110s. Now,
so 110s. So that means you start at the goal line.
No. We ain't running that way. That was easy.
Okay.
The running that way is easy.
So
I would love to just run a
straight across the
field. That's easy because the hard part is
changing direction.
Back because we're running sideline to sideline.
Right. So like if your basketball would be like a suicide.
Yeah. And you know how suicide. Yeah. I would rather just run around the track than to run suicide.
Absolutely.
So, we all had different times. Like receivers, I think receivers, defensive backs. I think our times were like 53, somewhere around there, 56. May not have been 56. It was in that 50, mid 50-ish. And then obviously the defensive lineman, offensive lineman, possibly the linebackers, theirs is a little bit higher. Theirs is close to a minute that they had to finish. So he's going to have at least a minute to finish, and it's not the first because we had to run 7 of them, 6 or 7. It's not the first 3. It's not the first 2 or 3. It's 4 and 5.
Right.
6 is easy because you're like, okay, 6, I'm done.
Empty the buckets.
Yeah. I'm giving it all. It's that 4 and 5 because it's like, damn.
Right.
Man, and it depends on when you get back. If you get back right at 53, all right, get back on the line in about 20, 30 seconds. You got to get back on the line and you got to run it again. So
it's being able to recover quickly.
Exactly.
The rest in between is big.
I think it's like a 45-second rest in between.
Yeah.
Both of them. In between each one of them. But running it on a hot day was the worst when it was, and even though we ran in the morning, but still some mornings the humidity's high.
Especially if it's on turf like that.
But we ran it on grass. Yeah, we always did it on grass. But
that's how I completed mine.
It was because it wasn't like for the guys that participated in off-season workouts. Now it's a little bit different. But for guys that completed I think it was 98, 99% of your off-season workouts, you didn't have to run the test. If you were there every day working out, you didn't have to run the test. You were qualified to miss 5 or 6 days. So those guys that were here, lived here, just like working out at the facility, they didn't have to run it because they were there all year round. It was for the guys like myself that were working out in other places, then coming in. But I never trained to run the 110s. I never, because that's not what I do. I don't sit there and run 110s in the game. I don't practice running
Right.
110s. But because of my condition, I was able to pass it anyway. So it was just that anxiety of running the test.
The anxiety is a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, look, these are professionals. This is part of their job. They have to do the job, but they are human, right? So that I know about the anxiety.
Those are real condition tests right there.
Yeah.
110s, mile in 6 minutes. Those are real conditioning tests that everybody, if you're in the athletic realm or you're in the public service, officers, firefighters, stuff like that, them 110s, try running those suckers. And we give y'all a minute to run. Try running those suckers.
It's suicides,
the
man. Post basketball. I don't think I've run one since I stopped playing. Like, they're not just fun. They're not fun. Like, hey, let's just go out and run a suicide.
No,
you just don't do that.
Nobody wakes up in the morning and say, you know what, my conditioning today, now that I'm 50 years old, I'm going to run me some 110s. Hell no, I ain't running no 110s.
They're the least fun thing.
Exactly.
It was petrifying.
Oh, my goodness.
Because we had to do it on turf.
Who thought of those?
I don't know.
I hate that person.
I mean, it's terrible.
I hate that person.
I mean, Willie mentioned it. Like, we started at the back of the end zone, and we went through the goal line on the other side. And so we had 19 seconds to get it done for skill position.
Yeah, so we used to do that just like regular working out.
Yeah. We had to do 16 of those. And then, obviously, the interior line, they got like 21 seconds. I was glad the skill position went before the line because like a lot of them were huffing and puffing. So get a little extra time to recoup in between. Yeah, no, it was bad. Then we had one time we got to do it on the top field with regular grass. That's when I got it done. People were yakking.
Well, see, that's the thing. It does happen where somebody gets sick or something, or you're pushing yourself to the limit.
Too much breakfast, and
so the team knows what guys on the team struggle with that, right? So you start feeling for them, and you see them. They're just so stressed before they know they've got to get through it. But it doesn't come easy to them. And these guys sometimes are the best players on your team. It doesn't always correlate who's the best at those things, the conditioning, and who's the best at the sport.
We had a guy, and I'm not going to say his name. I would never dare say his name. We had a guy in college. This guy was just a freak athlete, like freak. I mean, God, and in college, you like to have fun. Everybody likes to have fun. But he would have fun before the morning, like he would have fun the night before morning workouts, and they would be out all night.
Oh, no.
But no.
Doesn't sound good.
No. But he would come in and show no ill effects of that. This guy, he wasn't human. He was an alien, I think. This guy would run these 110s in college like they were nothing. Like, seriously, like he was probably the only guy because the other dudes that were hanging out with him, they were earling everywhere. When I say earl people, I mean throwing up. They were earling everywhere. But him, man, he get up on that line of scrimmage. Let's go. I'm like, dude, man, how can you do that's wrong that you are blessed like that you can have fun, enjoy college the night before, hanging out. And then everybody else going to bed, everybody else struggling, waking up like, man. And he just jumped in there, bam, let's go. I hated that guy. I didn't hate him like hate him like that, but I hated that he could do that because I couldn't do it.
Yeah. I don't know how it's done today as compared to the generation before. Yeah. Like the generation before me was like, you don't even get water or things like that. Like I know it evolves.
We were able to get
what's
water.
The best way to do it. Some people don't even think some of that actually helps you become better in some ways. I think it's necessary to a point, but some of it's like they're testing you mentally.
Yes.
They're seeing how far they're not just like, are you in shape to practice or not? It's more like, okay, you're going to get you in shape, but also we want to push you mentally. We want to push you to your limit. And some people, I think, would argue what are the real merits of that. But I don't know. Maybe that's still in there or not.
It could be.
It's much more high tech. You can track somebody's
heart rate, all that other
percent
stuff.
Body fat. It's they have a very high level of analysis they can do now.
One thing, another thing I hated too about that test, the rabbits. There was always one rabbit. It was always that young guy.
Make everybody look bad.
He didn't know no better. And he would get out there in the first 2 or 3, pow, pow, pow. And everybody just looking at him like, fool, slow down. And just a 400, when you sprint out those first 300, boy, that big elephant jumps on your back and you start looking ugly running. Your form is all deformed. It's just like, You don't know what you're doing. And that's typically how they are when 5 and 6 hit. It's just like their arms frailing. Like, what are you doing with your arms? Like Jared played. Like, I think they played it this morning.
With Joe, yeah.
When they said, Joe, what you do with your hands? When Vrabel said, what are you doing with your hands, man? That's typically how those guys are. Like, what are you doing with your arms, man? I mean, but they ran out of energy because they ran out there like a rabbit and thought they were going to be able to do this, just
the rabbits
easy.
can help and the rabbits can not help.
Yeah.
Right?
I've
seen people get really mad on the rabbit.
Yeah, they help more in the mile.
The distance stuff, we would always say, I was one of the rabbits because I wanted to show off because I knew when we got to the court, I may not be quite as good.
So you had to build us some brownie points.
Like, hey, he's in good shape.
Well, at least Willy's in good shape.
He works hard. He's in good shape. He runs that mile. But man, the big guys are like, slow down, Willy, slow down. So we got a couple of texts on this thing. Joel just texted and says, gassers.
Oh yeah, gassers. Stages. Just hate them.
Oh yes, the old gassers. Wes in Clarksville says, if T Sweat doesn't pass, Willy, what's the plan?
Hey, Willy, you got to start formulating the plan if he doesn't pass this test.
Jeff in Kingston Springs says, and I wonder this myself, I don't know the answer. What is the test? I don't know specifics. I would imagine there's probably still some derivation of the 110s.
It's some derivative of it.
I know the Predators get on the bike. Like they get the guys on the bike.
Okay.
And they get the oxygen. Like they want to test your heart rate.
Oh,
all of that
may
stuff.
Be a good thing. See, I don't know what they do now. I'm sure they may still run the 110s, the half gassers, sideline to sideline. I can't see them deviating too much from that, or either just running flat out 110s. I can't see, because other than that, what are you going to do? I mean, you could, like Predators, you could put them on a treadmill, but guys are like, I don't want to be on a treadmill. I'd rather be out running. That's what we do. We don't run. We don't play on treadmills. Let's go out and do what we need to do on the field. So I'm sure it's a derivative of the 110. They're doing it somehow, some way.
John and Burns text in on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. If we missed class or study hall, we had to do 1,000 yards of gassers after practice and conditioning, and an up down every 10 yards in full pads for 1,000 yards. Jeez, now that's old school.
Woo, y'all coaches mean.
I'm sweating just thinking about that. Or if it was the off season, it was the Nickel Club, 5:55 a.m. 55 minutes to do 5,000 steps in the gym.
I remember the 5 o'clock club when you didn't go to class. Oh yeah, you were part of the 5 o'clock club. You better be over there too. Whew.
Oh boy,
I was a part of the 5 o'clock club a few times.
Yep, it's not proud of it.
Yeah, I'm not proud of it. I'm trying to think, was it worth it then? Probably not. But I did get some extra conditioning in.
Yeah. You end up in good shape.
Yeah, you end up in great shape. So.
I was definitely part of that 5 a.m. club. I tried. It took me about 5 tries to get the 110s done. I mean, we were keeling over like a bunch of dead animals. It was bad.
Oh, all right. We're gonna get into some Titans questions here. We have a big one. Another one of my go-to podcasts, the MMQB. They had their panel ask the question: who are the teams that will win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? By the way, next hour, Brian Callahan will take the podium. We're not exactly sure. We know with Brian Callahan, he's not quite as punctual as Mike Vrabel. Like if he says it's 12:15, it may be 12:19, maybe 12:25. Mike Vrabel is a little more predictable. So we'll see when Callahan, this is day one. We don't even know exactly when they're doing the tests. If you're curious about Sweat, maybe they'll address it. Maybe they won't at the press conference today, but it's the opening training camp press conference. We'll hear from the Titans coach live during the show. And so we will get to a lot of Titans talk today. So in this first hour, we're going to set the table and ask the question, are the Titans a Super Bowl contender in the next 5 years? Will they win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? They asked the Sports Illustrated 10-person panel, who are the teams that will win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? So you had 10 writers with 5 choices each. And we'll tell you how many votes the Titans got in that discussion. And we'll ask ourselves here locally, could they be in the picture for a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? And what would have to happen to do that? 615-737-1037. 1025 is the number. Our phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll get into it next here on 1025 The Game. All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. Remember, if you have a home improvement project that you're looking to do, maybe it's this fall when the weather starts cooling off a little bit. Maybe it's an outdoor project, or maybe it's a bathroom or a patio you want to add on to your home. You want to make it more valuable, but you're looking for ways to fund that. Well, they've got that covered with the Express Equity Line of Credit program. You can get equity out of your home because your home's value is up, and you can make it more valuable with this home improvement project, but use your home's equity to get cash out of it and then fund the home improvement plan or anything else that you need that cash for. You can use it for. People are using this, and the average homeowner saves over $850 a month doing this because it's a better way to get the cash. So find out more. Ask Loan Pronto about their Express Equity Line of Credit program because it's such a free and easy program. You can get this AI-based system to get you approval in about 10 minutes with almost no documentation, no appraisal, no hassle. So it's a very smooth process, and before you know it, you'll have that new patio or that new man cave, whatever it is you're looking for your home. Call now, 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval.
What was the name of the guy on Talladega Nights?
Ricky Bobby?
Yeah, Ricky Bobby. I'm gonna start calling Rex Ricky Bobby. That's his name. Ricky Bobby. Joe Bobby. Hey, Joe Bobby.
But why are you holding your hands like that?
I'm trying to get a question in here.
Well, then ask the question. No, I'm just saying, like, you look ridiculous. Just ask the question, Joe.
Okay, let me ask.
How he contorted his hands. I think that's why he was upset. Yeah. Not necessarily at the questions. He just looked at his hands as he was asking the question. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
Your
man?
hands are dumb.
But
We're on to Atlanta and your hands are stupid.
exactly. So Joe, Bobby, that's your new name. Fix your hands, okay? Find something to do. Put your hands in your pocket when you ask a question.
I get it. When you talk with your hands, sometimes you can look a little fidgety. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can annoy people.
I guess Joe is a hands talker.
Yeah. But
There's
I
nothing
want
wrong
to
with
see the
that.
tape. I get I'm trying to get the visual of the Joe Bobby. I haven't seen it though.
Yeah, me either. But
Okay.
I mean, I take coach's word for it.
Well, Joe, we'll see if Joe can remain calm with the hands today. I'm sure he'll ask a couple of questions to Coach Callahan.
Yeah, he won't get the warm reception he got from Vrabel. He won't get that from Callahan.
It's
I don't think.
It was a little tense there with Coach Vrabel. You never knew what exactly was going to happen there.
Yes.
Willy and DMase is brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and over and in Tennessee to bet. So yesterday we talked a lot about the Titans and what we think is the biggest flaw that they have in their roster right now. Because so much is going to be on Will Levis. And Joe Rexroad has a very good in-depth piece on what the offseason was like with Will Levis. He took the receivers to Cabo. Tajay Spears went along as well. They had fun, but also worked on stuff. It's something that he saw that other great quarterbacks he respects, I think Brady was one of them, that he used to do. So a lot of eyes will be on him. But as far as building a winning team, they are way behind the 8 ball because of, as we documented yesterday, we won't go back all through it, but they had 3 drafts where they got very little or no foundational players. Today, it's interesting that Jacksonville has now reinvested in another one of their young drafted players, and they paid him big. He's never made the Pro Bowl, but they're paying him very, very big money. The Titans don't have those guys that are worth putting that second contract to. So that's a problem. So the question that the MMQB panel tried to discuss was, who are the teams that can win the Super Bowl in the next 5 years? Who will win the next 5 Super Bowls? A lot of the answers are obvious. Everybody had Kansas City on the list. Even though Kansas City's got challenges, can they three-peat this year? What about their receivers? We can get into that at some point during this preseason. Staying on top is always tough. But when you have Mahomes, you got a chance.
Yes.
7 of the last 10 Super Bowl winners were quarterbacked by either Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady. That's 7 out of 10. 3 Patriots, 1 Bucks, 3 Chiefs. So 4 Brady, 3 Mahomes. And then scattered in there, you've got the Nick Foles run that Philadelphia went on. You've got Matthew Stafford, sort of the hired gun to complete the Rams championship. And then you had an aging Peyton Manning with a tremendous Broncos defense. Those are your last 10 Super Bowl winners. So the number one question, of course, is, do you have the quarterback who can win it? But also, how is your roster? Do you have the roster the way you want it? So I'm going to give you a nuance that goes right in line with what you and I were discussing yesterday, DMase, in a moment. But when I throw that at you and I say, next 5 years, could the Titans be in a Super Bowl conversation? What comes to mind for you?
First and foremost, I think what comes to mind, obviously, it's the elephant in the room, the quarterback. But then as you were talking about this and you're trying to predict who's going to, be that team or those teams within the next 5 years that are going to win the Super Bowl, I started to look at this, and I don't think anybody truly looks at this. And this is one of the reasons why I believe that that this team, Kansas City, more than likely will in the next 5 years win 2 more championships. It's not just Patrick Mahomes alone. Your play caller is your head coach. He's not going anywhere. And most importantly, your defensive coordinator isn't going anywhere. He's not getting a head coaching job. Spagnoli, he's not getting he's at that point, I think, where, and I think coaches get to this point where you are what you are, and you had a chance to be a head coach. It didn't work. Now you are who you are, a damn good, one of the best defensive coordinators in the National Football League. Spagnoli is that. He could be regarded as one of the best to ever call plays on the defensive side of the ball. The retention with their coaches, their 2 main coaches, I don't see changing no time soon. they'll continue to get Spags a raise before he gets out of that building, I believe. And then the head coach is not going anywhere unless he retires. Even if he has a bad season, and a bad season, the Kansas City Chiefs is not making the AFC Championship game. Even if he has a bad season or two, Andy Reid's not going anywhere. So you're retaining the two top minds in your organization in regards to football, calling plays during the week or during Sundays or Mondays. Spagnolia and Andy Reid. That gives them a big advantage over everybody, because all these other teams that we're going to name, I guarantee you their offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator are young enough that they are potentially in line, if indeed they do have good seasons. They don't even have to win the Super Bowl, but if they have good seasons, they're in the line to what? Go somewhere else. And then we got to start this over with defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators. Kansas City, I believe, is probably one of the only teams that I don't see Spagnolia name being pushed around as far as the top candidate for a head coaching job in the next year. He could be, but I think not that he's not a good coach, or I don't think he would do a good job, but I think owners are past that now. He's reached that point where, okay, he's no longer a head coach type. He's more so of who he is, a damn good defensive coordinator, just like Rex Ryan. I don't think Rex is getting another head coaching job nowhere else. But can he get a defensive coordinator job somewhere? Absolutely. Why? Because he's one of the greatest defensive minds. So to me, that's why I put Kansas City number one. The quarterback, the offensive coordinator, which is the head coach, and the defensive coordinator, which is Spagnuolo. And I don't see him going nowhere no time soon.
The continuity
exactly
is a big part of it. And it certainly helps when you're looking at 5 years. If you're already sort of at the top, it kind of makes it easier for you to say, well, they got a chance to win in the next 2 years. So certainly they have a next 5-year chance.
Exactly. So
what's harder is for the Titans, we know that they're not a contender this year, and they're not likely to be a contender next year. A lot would have to go right. But in the next 5 years, because that's really the time of, the time frame of, you got a new stadium that you're going to be introducing at the back end of that. Can you get into that discussion? Like, you don't want to have to rebuild for 5 years, but it is a great question. So I'd love to know what Titans fans think of that. Do you think in the next 5 years they could win a Super Bowl? 615-737-1025. I will tell you that the 10 writers for Sports Illustrated, not surprisingly, none of them had the Titans on any of their lists. So that's 0 for 50, because you got 5 slots for 10 writers. So 10 times 5, that's 50 chances to get in there. The Titans did not get a single vote. They shouldn't feel bad, because there were about 20 teams, I think. Only 12 teams got votes.
And we all should know who those 12 teams are. I mean, we should.
Right. Some are very easy. Exactly. And then there's a few flyers, and there's some that in the podcast that we're going to play a clip from, there were some that they debated a lot, like Houston is one, right? Houston hasn't come close to winning a Super Bowl yet, but they look like they've got a foundation built. They've got a young quarterback who's on his first contract. They've got a lot of pieces. So can they make it work? Will they win one in the next 5 years? That's also a separate question. It's winning the Super Bowl, not getting to the Super Bowl.
Getting to a Super Bowl is different. Obviously, everybody knows that, than winning the Super Bowl. So the MMQB podcast was saying winning a Super Bowl, not necessarily getting the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And here's another reason why I think it's going to be difficult. Not to say that they can't do it, the Tennessee Titans, because anything can happen in sports. Nobody predicted us to go to Super Bowl in 99, and we went to Super Bowl in 99. But if you look at the Tennessee Titans, not only do they have a question mark at the quarterback position, and when I mean question mark, obviously, he hasn't had enough time on task, so we don't know quite what he is. And I said yesterday, and I'm going to continue to reiterate it. If they don't know by the end of the season, they need to go out there and get them another quarterback. They need to be in the market for another quarterback. But here's going to be another issue. Just like I said with Kansas City, it's the flip side with the Tennessee Titans. They got Nick Holtz and they got Denard Wilson. Do you think any one of those guys are going to be here in 5 years? If they do well, if this team do well, do you think any one of those guys be here in 5 years? Hell, 3 years. I don't think so. Denard Wilson, if that defense comes around, they're one of the best defenses in the National Football League, and if this team is doing it, he will get a coaching job. So now you got to replace him. If Nick Holt, even though
That would be a good problem. though.
it's a good problem, even though we know he's the play caller, but is he really calling plays during the game? But he is putting together a lot of the packages during the week. So he's vital at what they're doing. If this offense kickstarts and it gets going, he's gone. So now you got to replace your offensive coordinator and your defensive coordinator. That does shift the team, especially depending on how good those guys are. It can shift the team.
How many coordinators did the Patriots lose? They lost some during their
But
run.
Bill
right?
Belichick and Tom Brady were still there.
Yes, they definitely had that. I'm trying to think of
They went through
other
at
coaches.
least 3, and they finally settled on.
And like you said, it helps when this was sort of the angle of
Mhm.
taking Callahan is if you lose the coordinator, you still have the offensive
Exactly.
mind as your head coach, like Andy Reid is to the Chiefs.
yes.
So the Chiefs got a lot of votes. The 49ers got a lot of votes. The contenders that are there now, the Ravens, they got a lot of votes. Some of the ones that were more debatable, the Lions. The Lions have never been to a Super Bowl. They
I would
don't
love
have
to
a
see the
history of
Lions
winning,
go to
but
the
they
Super Bowl.
have a young roster that looks like it's poised for a big
And they
window.
got impact players on both sides of the ball.
Yes, and they're young.
Exactly.
Do they have the quarterback who is good enough to win it? That's part of the debate. They're certainly paying him
Mhm.
now. The Chargers, there was a lot of belief that the Chargers with Harbaugh will figure it out,
Mhm.
even though that's not a franchise that has figured a lot out over the long haul, right? That's not
Yes.
their history, but Harbaugh's got a lot of credibility. Speaking of Harbaugh, the Ravens got a lot of votes, as you would imagine,
Exactly.
just because they always seem to be in it. And they've got a quarterback who, if he can get it done in the playoffs, should be, in the discussion, especially this year.
Exactly.
So do we think the Titans can get there? We'd love to hear from you. 615-737-1025. Let's get to Kyle to kind of start the discussion here. Kyle, welcome to the show. He's on our phone line driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com.
What's going on, guys?
Hey.
Yeah, I'm definitely a believer in the Titans in about a 3-year window. I know you said 5, but about 3, because this team likes to keep our rookie contracts on those rookie contracts as long as possible. So on year 4, he may still be on it, but I believe he is the man. I really do. And Rand Carthon, I'm enjoying his draft picks, the decisions he's making. He makes relationships for players who want to come play for him. Amy has proven that she will spend the money. We got this new stadium coming in, and that's definitely a big incentive to make a strong push for that. I just like the direction. Everything just feels so different and refreshing. I'm not trying to blame Vrabel for everything and all the injuries, but I feel like this thing's about to turn around. And we got the deep ball. Will Levis has that deep ball. We got Ridley for a few years. We're going to replenish everything.
So what you're saying, Kyle, is you saw enough in Will Levis last year that has convinced you that, okay, I think he's the guy. Because you're probably not the only person that feels this way.
When I was watching him against Pittsburgh and Miami and Atlanta, I felt like he was the best player on the field on offense. Like, he was doing his thing all on his own. Like, he just felt like he had no help, but he didn't complain, didn't say a word, just kept his. Him and Hopkins definitely got into it, but that's we love that. How do you feel about Levis? Do you think it's still up in the air, or because I just get my gut says he's the dude?
I think
Thank
this
you,
is.
Kyle. We
Thanks for the
appreciate
call,
it.
Kyle. That's
That's a
why
good
I
call.
think this is a good
Mhm.
exercise, because there's 2 parts of it.
Exactly.
One of them is how much you're confident that Levis will get into the running, because to win it, again, the question is who will win the Super Bowl in the
Not
next
who
5
will
years.
get there, but
Not
who will
get to
win
a
it.
couple playoffs,
Mhm.
win a couple playoff games. It's win the Super Bowl. Like, for example, the Bills in the next 5 years. They've got a quarterback who can get you into the discussion, but can he get you over the top? Winning the Super Bowl is different. Joe Burrow and the Bengals, they got to a Super Bowl. Can they make the decisions as a franchise to win a Super Bowl? Getting the quarterback is a big part of it, but the other part of it is the roster building part.
Mhm.
This is why I think it's hard to put the Titans on the list, because not only does Levis have to do his thing, but they have to build the roster. And when we come back, we're going to play you part of why nobody voted for the Titans and why it's essential, because one of the things that can get you in the running quick is if your quarterback is on the first contract and not making the big dollars yet, and you have more resources to address the roster. That's a great formula, right? That should be what the Titans are trying to do, correct? But let's talk about the reality of that when we come back. We're listening to Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. Willy and DMase broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We're asking the question, can the Titans win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? SI did it. They polled 10 writers. The Titans got no votes. What do you think of that question, though? How optimistic are you? On our call and text line, we've got a couple of reactions. 615-737-1025. Please participate. One texter says, yesterday we were talking about the Titans having only 2 or 3 good players under the age of 26. Today we're talking about if they can win a Super Bowl in 5 years. You're telling me there's a chance. Well, I think yesterday you can kind of get a sense of how high this mountain is right now for 2 reasons. Number one, you don't know if you've got the quarterback. I'm optimistic about the quarterback. I think Levis has a chance. What I'm less optimistic of is, can they get the roster where it needs to be to win big? Here is what Connor Orr said about the key of having the quarterback on the first contract and having a lot of money to spend on the rest of the roster. This is a key point. Listen closely.
I think that the days of the win it on the QB's rookie contract, I think that's played out. I think it's done. I think that we're seeing all these teams move with those machinations anyway. Like the Texans are a good example this offseason, right? Hey, good first season. Everything's rolling. Let's trade for Stefan Diggs. Let's bring in a bunch of free agents. Let's spend the money while we can spend the money. But I mean, it happened once or twice in a short period of time. And then all of a sudden, everybody kind of, I think, got it twisted that that's the formula. I completely disagree. I think that the entire roster has to be pre-baked before you get that guy in there. And we're talking about whether it was the Rams with Stafford, the Bucks with Brady, all of these really good teams. I mean, even the Chiefs roster was fairly pre-baked before Mahomes got there. And then he was ushered through.
Oh, Nick, yeah, I wanted you to let it play a little longer because it had a great food reference. And he used the example of taking the Pillsbury pre-baked pizza crust.
Yes.
Where you pre-bake the crust.
And
it's part of, he called it part of the culinary experience.
I can grab it real quick.
Pre-bake, you'll enjoy it. But it's simply a metaphor. And that really got me thinking. And I was like, he's right. They were talking about the Texans. And a lot of optimistic Titans fans have said, well, look at the Texans. They went from being one of the worst to a playoff team overnight. When really that wasn't the case. He was really talking about the Texans there. And they had done some groundwork. They had laid a foundation, then drafted the quarterback, and then they were more ready to win. Whereas, of course, Carolina, total mess on the other end of the spectrum. They had nothing to put around Bryce Young, and he was running for his life. He failed miserably, and it wasn't all his fault, but they had no support system. For the Titans, they don't have much that's pre-baked, right? They're going into a brand new era. They just changed all of the coaches. They don't have a lot of young talent. They're trying to catch up on the offensive line and defensive line as they insert Will Levis in as the guy. And so I don't think that is ripe for a big jump anytime soon because of the pre-baked. He used the Kansas City. Remember the Titans beat Kansas City when Alex Smith was the quarterback. They had Patrick Mahomes on the team.
He was a backup. So
they had a good team before Mahomes stepped in the next year, and then they started on this great run that they're on.
Yeah. He's right from the standpoint of, okay, trying to, it's not necessarily, winning a championship while under a rookie contract. He's right about the roster being in a place where it's ready to win. And then all of a sudden you throw in that, rookie quarterback, or that, in Tampa's case, that veteran quarterback in Tom Brady. That was a roster that was already ready to, they were ready to win the Super Bowl. They had players on both sides of the ball. They were just mixed. They were just missing that one ingredient.
And then they threw in a bunch of other veterans on top for the icing on top to go with Brady.
Absolutely. So they end up winning their Super Bowl. You're able to maybe not win a Super Bowl under a rookie contract, but you're able to position yourself so when you do have to pay that rookie, eventually you're ready to go. You're stockpiling your roster because why? You're not giving all the money to the quarterback just yet. You're building a roster in hopes that you can get to a Super Bowl. But it might be that second contract where now we get to the Super Bowl. Now the roster is fixed the way we want to. That's why you look at, whether it's the Houston Texans, they are exhibit, test study A or test study 1, or you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, or they just gave him a new contract, but in the process of giving him a new contract, what did they do? They built up their roster through the draft and through, free agent, supplemented through free agency as well. But they probably feel now we are in the best position to win a Super Bowl because we're able to build the roster while the quarterback was making less than what he's making now. So now you can look at Jacksonville a different way. You can look at Jacksonville a lot different than you looked at them 2 or 3 years ago. Houston's in the same boat. They're able to build their roster while not giving the quarterback the money. Now, in this situation, the quarterback's damn good. You may end up winning a Super Bowl under the rookie contract. You go back to other teams that, Lamar Jackson is the same way. They were trying to build this roster up. So when he was ready, they can go. When they gave him that new contract, their roster was built and ready to go. You look at them now, their roster, they feel, is built and ready to go to now win a Super Bowl, even though people say they should have won it last year. And I'm one of those people. They should have won it last year. They had a damn good team. They just, for whatever reason, didn't play well against Kansas City. Then you look at other teams that have sort of went down this path of building their team, and then ultimately they get their quarterback, and then they're ready to win now. You can win with a rookie quarterback on his contract, but you got to build the roster the right way. Yes. So when you're ready to pay him, he's ready to go and win you a Super Bowl.
Yes, and the timing doesn't seem right for the Titans right now because
of the
so
roster
little
and
around.
The quarterback.
Right.
It's still a question mark.
The support system that they put around Will Levis is admirable. They're like, we got to help the guy.
But it's young.
But it's veteran guys, older guys that aren't going to grow with him. And on the defense, the offensive line, they don't have the foundational pieces yet. You're really hoping that the offensive line investment with the left tackle and the left guard is going to pay off, and the center. Like I think that has got to hit. If this is going to become something, it's hard to know what your team's going to look like in 5 years. I get that, but when you have a second-year quarterback, 2 first-round picks on the left side of the offensive line, I do think it's fair, especially with a new stadium. I do think it's fair to say, okay, what is this going to look like in 5 years? Are Levis, Latham, and Skoronski going to be on the team in 5 years? It would certainly help if they are.
You hope that's the plan. If they're not on the team in 5 years, then you failed. Seriously,
you're not going to be very high up on the mountain. It's hard. It's going to be hard to overcome that.
So you look at this, and Jerry made a good point yesterday about how we look at the Tennessee drafts over the last couple of years, and he made it a point that the Traylon Burks and A.J. Brown, that swap has put the Titans in the position that they're in now. That swap right there. Because you had a guy that was reaching, that all-star status in A.J. Brown. So you can build their offensive passing game around him. You trade him away in hopes that now Traylon Burks can be that guy. And he hasn't been. That sets you back now. You look at teams, look at the Houston Texans. They're, just like you said, Willie, these receivers are going to grow with C.J. Stroud. Nico Collins just signed a big deal. Tank Dell still on his rookie contract. I'm not even – Stephon Diggs is 2 more – next year at the most, unless he just has a hell of a season the next 2 years and they want to sign him. But next year, it's probably – after next season, they probably get ready to move on from him. But their core will live on with the quarterback. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, if they don't get injured, he's going to grow with them. The Titans have nobody that Will Levis can grow with right now. And that's a problem. You hope that Traylon Burks this season starts to show that he can stay healthy. And if he stays healthy, I think the production will come. But right now, they have nobody that can grow with Will Levis. Diop, he's an older veteran. He's not going to grow. You don't see him 5 years down the line with Will Levis. Tyler Boyd, definitely not. Calvin Ridley, I believe after 3 years, he's going to be gone. I just think, I think he's going to be gone. I'm not saying he's going to play bad, but I just think after the 3rd year, they're going to be looking, okay, we may have to, and it may be because of the money. They may have to move away from it. So they have nobody that can grow with Will Levis from a pass catching standpoint in the receiver room. Nobody. At least no one that we have seen on the field that has shown anything. Everybody that has shown something, they're older. Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, D Hop. These are the guys that are going to be with Will Levis for the next 2 years, really. That's it. They need to find them someone that just like CJ Stroud, just like Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers he can grow with. The Titans need to find somebody that Will Levis can grow with. They thought it was Traylon Burks. He still can be Traylon Burks, but because he hadn't shown anything, they are 2 steps behind rather than a step ahead.
Yes, and the only way to do that is to draft and develop
Exactly.
talent. And that is the dilemma. I heard one of Jared's discussions along these lines. He was talking about the Derrick Henry. They didn't take the pick. Okay, we understand why they didn't want to trade Derrick Henry.
Exactly, we get it.
I get that. But somewhere along the line, you've got to get some picks. That's the only way you're going to build the roster back. And that is going to be, I think, something that they could be faced this year at the trade deadline, where they might have some veterans that other teams are like, well, we could use a DeAndre Hopkins, or we could use a Tyler Boyd. You could get a pick here and there. But you're saying, well, that's my security blanket for my young quarterback. It's a tough decision for sure. So they're at the bottom of the mountain. I'm not surprised they didn't get any votes for the next 5 years, but I do think it's a very important question for this franchise, especially with a new stadium coming and the prices they're asking for the tickets, is can they build something in the next 5 years that gets you in the discussion, especially in an AFC that has Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence,
Herbert,
Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, like Justin Herbert. It is a deep, deep group of AFC teams that look like they all could have something figured out. It's not an easy conference to win. Big, big question. When we come back, we'll start going around the NFL. USA Today came out with their predictions. They had an interesting pick to win the Super Bowl. We'll tell you who they picked and where they had the Titans in the first season predictions that I've seen so far.
Yes,
there'll be plenty to come for sure, but this is an early look at what some people perceive what's going to happen in the NFL this year. Also, at some point next hour, we're going to hear from Brian Callahan when he takes the podium. We think it's going to be in the back end of the hour, but be listening. You'll hear from the Titans coach today on the opening day of training camp. Stay tuned. We're coming back with more of Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. Titans training camp has begun today. The opening press conference is coming up later this hour, so keep an eye out and listen here, and you'll be able to hear it. You can hear us, of course, on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Both frequencies are absolutely free app. Just download that, thegamenashville.com, the website, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. Got a lot of different ways you can listen to us. So please do each and every day. This is the place you're going to want to be for the best sports talk for another great fall football season coming up. So speaking of that, part of this time of the year, the predictions. The predictions are not high for the Titans at all. I know we want to be optimistic here, but it should not surprise everybody that there's not a lot of people picking the Titans to do much this year. It's a lot of let's see what they've got. Let's see what the new coaches look like. Let's see what Levis looks like. USA Today came out with their record projections and Super Bowl winners. They had the Titans at 6-11. That shouldn't surprise anybody. 6-11, I think, is right in the ballpark. I think the over/under for most Vegas odds is about 6.5, and that sounds about right. We'll see how the preseason goes. I'm going to withhold what I think the actual record's going to be until later. I know Jared came out yesterday, acted like he was real controversial by saying 5-12. I don't think that's unrealistic at all. I think it absolutely could be 5-12. But we know there's a lot of X factors there.
Mm-hmm.
What surprised me about the predictions you sent from USA Today, DMase, is who they had winning the Super Bowl. They had the Jets.
Ooh.
What?
I mean, listen, you can't blame them. You really can't blame them.
In the AFC coming through there, the Jets, I don't buy it.
You can't blame them. They got one of the best defenses in the National Football League. They proved that last year. They won despite their quarterback, and a lot of it, majority of it, all of it was because of that defense. Then you add, Aaron Rodgers back to the mix, another year of not Jackson Smith and Jigba, but the other Ohio State receiver.
Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, Garrett Wilson. Another year of Garrett Wilson. They've upgraded the offense a little bit. It's not a surprise pick for me. I think people we got to start looking at Aaron Rodgers for what he is and who he is. He's still one of the greatest quarterbacks. He's still one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League right now. And he's one of the greatest quarterbacks. If you're just talking about arm talent, like what he can do with the ball, he's still one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. I know he's, 39, 40 years old. But he's still capable. The last time we saw Aaron Rodgers before the injury, he had a good season. You're talking about a guy in his late 30s that won MVPs. He's still capable of doing that. So I understand why they picked the Jets. But then again, it's like, man, he's 40 years old. He's coming off an Achilles. Right. Will he be able to make it through the whole season? So there's that flip side.
Yes, and it goes back to our philosophical discussion in the last hour of how do you build a Super Bowl winner? Mm-hmm. The Buccaneers won doing a little bit of what the Jets are trying to do here. The Buccaneers had a good roster and then added the veteran quarterback in the twilight of his career and won the Super Bowl. The Jets are trying to replicate that. I think everybody would say they've got, because they were bad for so long, they've started to assemble a pretty good young nucleus of talent. They've got a talented defense. They've got, as you mentioned, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, some good young players that they can build around. They've got, you would think, a healthy Breece Hall. They've got some other question marks like a lot of people, but they're hoping that if you could get one great year out of Aaron Rodgers, you could win it. The reason I think in theory that could work, I think they could be good. I'm a little skeptical that they can get through the gauntlet of all of the good teams in the AFC. I think there's just too much balance, and I think there's too little of a chance that Rodgers still has a magic to get all the way to the end at his age and what happened last year.
Okay, what was their record last year? They were
7-10, I think.
7-10. So we insert, and I know this is the easy way to do it, and I know it doesn't always work out that way. That's this way. They were 7-10 last year, and every season is
Right.
not built the same.
With a horrific quarterback.
Yeah, with the horrific quarterback. You add Aaron Rodgers back in the mix, he's got to be at least 3 to 4 wins, at least 3 wins for you.
I think there's no
alone.
question. I'll grant you that. And a lot of people point to they have a better backup. They have Tyrod Taylor, who's
Exactly.
a much more reliable backup than when they were trying to use Zach Wilson, who was
And then
just
they
a
went
mess.
exactly.
Right?
Then they went out and got Hassan Reddick, that
Right.
bolsters their
Who is
defense.
that's a
right
story
along with
because he
Quentin
hasn't
Williams.
he hasn't
He hadn't
reported
signed
yet.
yet
Yeah.
because he wants a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Well, they said the report is they're going to reallocate some money or give him a little bit more money this year as opposed to redoing the contract. And it seems like he's not opposed to that. But on defense, they got the cornerbacks. Michael Carter Jr. is a damn good cornerback. Obviously, Sauce Gardner. You got DJ Reed, Quentin Williams, and Hassan Reddick. This team is built to win now. And I didn't even those are the guys on defense. They have playmakers as well on offense. I think the biggest thing for them is 2. Xavier Gibson, who's a rookie, and then Mike Williams. If you can keep Mike Williams healthy, he is a hell of a red zone target. He's a big target. What is he, 6'5"?
Yes. He's
They
a
have
matchup
the
problem.
yin and the yang. They got Garrett Wilson, the smaller, shiftier, he can contort his body into different, positions to make catches, good with his hands. And then you got Mike Williams, if he can stay healthy, the big body receiver that can get downfield to make those tough contested catches in between the hashes. So to me, and that's not even adding Brees Holmes to the mix, Brees Halls to the mix as well. So you're taking a Hall of Fame quarterback who's still playing good football, add him to this roster. I see why people say, yeah, that's my pick to win a Super Bowl.
I think that's what we love about the NFL
Mhm.
is that I think it's not that much of a stretch in a lot of cases to add 2 or 3 wins to what you think your
Yeah.
team is, because it can fall right. Guys stay healthy. A couple of people come out of nowhere. Maybe you catch a break in your schedule and you play 1 or 2 teams that just on a given week are decimated with injuries and you take advantage. There's a lot of things. And so I agree. If things fall right for the Jets, I think they could be very good. I just think to win the Super Bowl, that is a stretch. I am not against them making the playoffs. I think they can definitely do that.
Mhm.
If I'm a Jets fan, I'd be disappointed if I got 15 games out of Aaron Rodgers and that wasn't good enough to make the playoffs, because I think the rest of the roster is legit.
Yes.
Now, you sent me these.
Mhm.
Did you take note of who they had winning the AFC South?
Yeah.
They had the Colts,
They had the coach winning.
11-6.
There's this, I swear, there's this, I don't know what it is, and we all are still trying to figure this out. Maybe it's still the Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning sort of, and Tony Dungy sort of like, but it's bleeding into even teams now, because the one reason I wouldn't pick them, I don't know what their quarterback is, even though I think he can potentially be a good quarterback. He just had surgery on a shoulder. How is he going to come back? How are you going to progress this offense? Are you now in his second year after him only playing so many games? Now are you going to throw a lot of the offense? You still got to walk him through so slowly because it's time or task. He didn't have enough time on task last season. So I don't, and again, Indianapolis may win the division, but I don't understand this love fest with Indianapolis. I just don't, especially not now.
I think it's another guy that you can see going a lot of directions in Anthony Richardson. Here's another example. We're going to play you a clip from the Ringer podcast. They were talking about Richardson and his wide range of what could happen here, because he can really wow you. And as we talked about in the last hour, they have done a pretty good job, I think, of setting the table. And you can use the example of how competitive they were last year without Richardson. Really, they still were able to be competitive. And so they've done a pretty good job, I think, with their roster around a young quarterback. But Richardson is a guy that still absolutely could explode. Here's the discussion on the Ringer NFL podcast about what Richardson could be.
Jordan Love thing where he's making throws off platform, but it doesn't affect his arm strength at all. He made one throw in the Rams game where Aaron Donald was holding him. Aaron Donald, the best defensive player of all time, in my opinion, maybe one of the best football players of all time, maybe one of the best athletes of all time, had him in his grasp. And this guy threw a 40-yard perimeter outside the numbers, down the field throw, right on the money in stride. And I can't get that throw out of my mind. And if you watch the games, if you watch that Rams game specifically, there are so many other instances and flashes of his arm talent. Like you talked about his ceiling. I don't know what his ceiling is. I'm not saying he's going to hit his ceiling. I think there's a very small chance that he hits his ceiling because how many players do. But if he hits his ceiling, I mean, this is a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen type talent we're talking about.
Okay, so there's some Anthony Richardson. Remember how young he is. He's only 22. They pointed out he only had 98 dropbacks last year. He played 4 games. But in those 4 games, you saw some plays where you're like, wow, right? But this is the issue with him going back to high school is being able to stay on the field. But and we have Indy Ben, who, of course, seems to sense when we're going to talk about the Colts. And he has texted in our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Colts arguably have a roster right on par with Houston. I'm not sure if I agree with that. When Richardson played against Houston in their first meeting, the Colts dominated Houston. Yeah, and that was early in the season before we really knew what everybody was. But I don't think it's crazy to think that if Richardson can stay on the field, that the Colts could have a year like the Texans had last year. Is that crazy?
No, it's not. It's not crazy. And I'm just looking at their offense here. Obviously, you still have one of the best running backs in the National Football League in Jonathan Taylor. You have a top 15 wide receiver in Michael Pittman Jr. I would say he's top 15. Josh Downs, who showed flashes as a rookie, and then when got Mitchell out of Texas last year. Well, they got him in this draft, so they're trying to bolster. This is exactly what we talked about with Will Levis that he doesn't have. He has 3 guys, Richardson, that he can grow with. One that just signed a contract, and 2 that are on their rookie contracts. He has 3 guys that he can grow with in that passing game. And if those 3 guys hit, we're talking about a passing game that could rival the next year or 2. That can rival a Cincinnati Bengals or Kansas City Chiefs, depending on how the quarterback does. So you look at their roster and it's promising because it's young. Well, honestly, this is the same thing we could say about Will Levis. I've seen some throws Will Levis made was like, wow, So, but they are not in the position that Indianapolis is as far as their receivers.
We'll come back to this theme. Brian Callahan has taken the podium for his opening press conference for Titans training camp. So let's go out to the complex.
Bunch of guys that now fit that, between Cheeto and LJ, those are 2 really physical corners. They'll come up and hit, they tackle. And now you add a guy like Jamal in there with Hook in the back end and Roger as the nickel, and you got a pretty good group of physical presence in the secondary, and that's what we're looking for.
Expect to see maybe the first few days, especially out of Will.
Yeah, Will's in a really good place. I'm excited about what he's going to play like. I'm excited to see it, but it's more just about playing on time. Is getting that timing back, the accuracy, the timing, and decision making are sort of the 3 things that you look for, especially early on, and try to get that developed as quickly as possible. Kind of get back into the we and so those would be what I'm looking for. And I think that having Will, the work that he put in, how he looks right now is exciting, and now we got to go do it.
How pleased were you to hear that he took guys to Cabo and gathered guys at Vanderbilt?
Yeah, it's great. That's what your quarterback, that should be doing. You should have a guy that's going to take a leadership role with the team and make sure that he's bringing guys with him. And that's a big part of leadership is bringing people along with you. And I thought he's done a fantastic job of setting the tone for those guys on offense and putting the necessary work in to have a chance to be successful and being able to have a leadership presence that, he probably this is the first time he's had since he was in college. So I'm excited about that. I think guys responded well to it.
We spoke in the spring about how during that portion of the offseason, he was kind of focused on working through some things, changing the way that he approaches different elements of his game, kind of like being in the lab a little bit, does that mentality change once you get to August? Do you want to see a significantly different approach to the way that he practices?
Significantly different, no, but it does change. I mean, that's an accurate observation. Is that now we're getting ready to go play, and a lot more of it is about making sure that our offense and our team is ready to go play football. And so there's a little bit less of the experimenting and the tweaking, and more about trying to really dial in and lock down the details and the expectations of the position and the job. And there's still some room for some experimentation and some, but by this point, by the time we really get going, we need to be ready to play football, and it's less about those experimentations. Now, that's not to say that there's not work and technique and all those things over the course of an entire season, but the focus does change a little bit.
How quickly do you need to find your answers on the right side of the offensive line to have that group gel cohesively?
Those are going to be real battles. I mean, those are real position battles, and they are open. So it's going to go probably the length of training camp. We'll probably declare at some point. They probably won't hear who's going to start there until the opening game, to be honest. And that's the fair way to do it, because I think we got players that are capable, guys that are going to compete. And I think the competition raises the level of performance. And so those will be open jobs. That's the competition. Who you see out there the first day may not be who you see there the second day, and they're going to rotate and have equal opportunity to claim that job. And then obviously once someone's play necessitates them getting more reps, then they'll get more reps. And but that's going to be fun. I'm excited about that battle. I think those guys are up to the task, and you're going to see a lot of those guys playing throughout the course of camp and in the preseason. So to answer the question directly about how quickly you'd like that to happen, I mean, sure, you'd love to have all 5 guys from the day one till the end of training camp together, but that's just not the reality of it. And we got good players that I think are competing for those spots. And if it takes till the week 1, then it takes to week 1.
I talked earlier about Will maybe bettering his kind of accuracy and completion percentage. What are some things that he can do, and what are maybe some things that staff can do to help him in that regard?
Yeah, for him as a quarterback, knowing where to go with the ball, know that the timing that it's required to be at the location are probably the 2 biggest things. Then you get down to the technique part, your footwork, your recognition of the coverage, all that stuff starts to play in. But the biggest thing is knowing where to go with the ball and knowing where to go at the timing that it's supposed to get there. And as far as coaching wise, we can make that easy for him. We can make the reads easy. We can make the system manageable, digestible. And then hopefully he takes some mastery over that as well. And over time he'll get there. But I think that's the biggest thing is just knowing what to do and where to go is kind of the first part. He's got the ability to throw accurately, his mechanics and all those things. He's an accurate thrower. A lot more of accuracy is about throwing it on time and knowing when to let the ball go, where the window is, understanding location of defenders and where you're supposed to put the ball. So those are all things that we'll work on, probably every day for most of training camp. And I think he's improved a tremendous amount over the course of the offseason as well. So again, I'm excited to see, what Will looks like as we get going.
We're doing a more extensive pre-practice stretch than we'd seen before. Is that something continues now?
Yeah.
And how much does Zach feel like that gets you guys?
Yeah, it's more of a dynamic movement warm up than just like an old school stretch. And a lot of that is prepping the body for movement. And Zach's really well researched. He spends a lot of time thinking about those things, adapting when new information comes to light and new things come into the warm-up procedure. But I think our players really responded to it well, and they liked it. They feel ready for practice. And it's more about getting ready to go full speed and burst than it is just to stretch like we're all used to stretching, So I feel like you probably see that around the league. A lot of places is there's more of a shift into this dynamic warm-up and movement-based warm-up as opposed to just the old school stretch lines.
You have to sacrifice a little bit of time elsewhere to trade off for what you had to do?
Haven't yet. I mean, we'll as we start getting some of these longer practices in training camp, we'll see. It'll be my first time doing it like that, but I don't think so. I mean, there's enough hours in the day and in the rules of the CBA that I don't think we'll have any issues. But yeah, it's a little bit longer than your traditional beginning of practice for sure.
To put things together, how do you approach just like veteran days off, the management for guys, especially someone like Snead?
Yeah, we track some of it's injury related or coming off of injuries. That's a training staff. That's Todd and his crew kind of advising on when those guys might need to be pulled back. We also manage loads off of the GPS and a strength staff, so they manage all that, and the sports science part on how many yards are running, how many full speed yards, what the accelerations and decelerations are. Those things all get factored in. Sometimes a guy will come, you'll end up in maybe the third period of practice, and he'll have sort of redlined, if you will, on some of that GPS stuff. And Zach will come over and say, hey, he's done for the day. And then we shut him down. So there's a science part of it that's tracked. There's an injury part of it from the training room. And then sometimes it's just a good old fashioned guy needs a break, but for the most part, we try to base as much as we can off of whatever data we've received and what our training staff sees in the rehab processes.
Is there a separate approach Forrest need given some of the
Yes.
ways he's been managed in the past?
Yeah, he'll be managed differently, just because that's how he's, he managed to play almost every snap last year, and so that's ultimately the goal is be healthy and available on Sundays. And so to get him to that point, we have a program in place for him that we've consulted with him on, and our trainers and doctors, and so we should be all good there.
Changing the kickoff.
Aside
from the players that have injuries or are working through something, the team as a whole, when it comes to managing that ramp up period, the physicality over the next couple of weeks, how do you manage that line leading up into putting on the pads and then also joint practices down the line?
Yeah, the way that the CBA is spelled out now, we're under I think it's an 8-day acclimation period, which really ultimately it forces us to keep the process in a slow build. So the first day is today. We can't do any football. It's more of just a movement, conditioning, whatever that is. The second day, you get 75 minutes. The third day, you get 90, and then you get 90, and then you have to have a day off every 7 days. And so it sort of spells itself out. And then once that first day off hits, we'll be in our kind of our ramp period into full pads in our normal cadence throughout training camp. So you get into training camp based on the rules, and it's already there. It's almost like OTAs for a couple of days. There's no helmets, and we're in shorts and all that. So it's pretty easy to follow those rules, and the players, it's been negotiated, so we have to. But that kind of manages itself. And then when you get into camp, there's a part of you have to do hard things still. Like at practice, you have to be in pads. It has to be hard. It's got to be hot. You want all those things to happen, and that's part of building up your toughness and your resilience as a football team. And so that'll happen as we get into the pads. The joint practices are really fun. I love joint practices, and it's a good test because now you got guys going a little bit harder. You're not trying to take care of each other the same way that you do with your own team, and it's a little bit more competitive. And it's controlled still though, so you get all the benefits of competition without the game day where it's live and all the bullets are flying and those guys are at risk of injury. It's a little bit more controlled than that. So really excited to have those guys come out here and practice. It'll be fun.
With the rule change that's coming up and you're getting to implement that now in the kickoff, does it change at all the type of athletes that you put on kickoff return and kickoff cover rather than just having a bunch of guys who can run 50 yards and hit somebody head on?
I think it is going to change a little bit. I don't know for sure until we see a little more actual contact and like the preseason games. I mean, obviously no one's going to show scheme, but you're going to get a feel for what it looks like. And my guess would be, there's going to be some changes in the body types across the league. I think it'll be interesting to follow the types of players that are going to be able to be effective in those roles, because it's very different, very, very different than anything we've seen before. So it makes me nervous, and I'm also excited to see what it looks like.
Framework in mind in terms of starters and how much you want them in this game, that game?
Yeah, those conversations we've kind of started between Rand and I, and working through what that's going to look like. I'll hesitate to say anything now because it could change. I don't want to pin myself down to one thing, but I do. Our team needs to play together. They need to play football together. We need to operate on offense and to operate on defense. We got a lot of new faces and new people here, so that's an important part of the preseason to me. So our starters will play. They'll play enough is probably the best way to put it. And then just philosophically, when we practice against the Seahawks for 2 days, they'll probably play less in that game because they'll get a bunch of heavy work for 2 days against them anyway in practice. But I do see our starters will probably play in all 3 games, and we'll see, what that looks like lengthwise. But we need to play together and operate together and play some football before we get started.
What's your
How do you view the opportunity for snaps in the tight end room, especially with the three of Chig, Wiley, and Vanette?
Yeah, it's a room I'm excited about. I've really been impressed with Josh and Chig. Having Nick as a veteran presence, the guy's done it for a long time, has been great. It's going to be, they're all going to get plenty of opportunities. I mean, it's not a room that is going to be dominated by one guy. Those guys are all going to help us. They all are going to have roles, and it allows us to be a little bit more multiple in a personnel grouping. So we can use all three of them. We can use two of them. We can use one of them. And they all have different skill sets. So it's sort of we're going to fill the tight end role with a lot of different players as opposed to maybe just one or two guys like some teams do. But they're also young too, then they're emerging. And so I'm excited to see what Josh does in training camp, how Chig comes along. So it's a fun group. I'm excited about them. They got great energy. And I think that they got a chance to really help our offense.
Talked about Mason and Malik competing. What's that look like maybe from a rep standpoint, how you handle them?
Yeah, it'll still be pretty split evenly. Obviously at some point, just like all position battles, you do have to make a decision. And a lot of that's going to be how they play. They're going to get opportunities to play in games, and that goes a long way in the evaluation process, but also just the performance in practice every day, the consistency. They'll both have equal opportunity to establish themselves as the backup quarterback, and I'm looking forward to that competition.
Coach's standpoint, is it a little bit more unique?
Yeah.
In the running backs room, just with two similar backs in terms of deciding who will be the starter with Tajay and Tony?
Yeah, I don't really look at them as one starting over the other, truthfully. I think they both have really unique skills that we're going to find a way to use in a lot of different ways. Then that's the fun part for me right now is how are we going to deploy those guys? And maybe they both play at the same time. Maybe one gets hot and we let them run. Maybe one gets, maybe we just rotate back and forth. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. But they're both going to play quite a bit of football for us. And I don't view either one of them as a starter or a backup. They're both starting players to me. And then the rest of the running back room is going to be fun to see how that shakes out. I mean, we still need guys to contribute on special teams in the running back room, and we need a third back to step up. And there's some competition there kind of underneath the surface for that third back.
A little bit of a picture. Just what is your barometer for success in year one? What are some specific goals you have for this team you think you need to get?
Yeah, I try not to look too far ahead. But I would like to see an efficient offense, an offense that looks like we know what we're doing. The style of defense, you want guys to play within the scheme. You want to see the competitive nature, the attitude that we're looking for, the soundness of the scheme. I think that we're going to be a really competitive football team. And to put a number on wins or losses or expectations, I think a lot of it still remains to be seen. We have a lot of work to do to get to that point. And I'm excited about the work and the process to get there. And, I want to see us get better every day ultimately. And it's a cliche and it's a coach speak answer. I understand that, but that's the truth really. I mean, I haven't gone much past, my meetings this afternoon I have to get ready for. So I'll let you guys determine what success looks like.
Or as close as you thought you'd be to where you want to be when you took the job 9 months ago?
I do. I feel really good about where our team is at. I feel good about the players we've drafted. I feel good about the players we added in free agency. I feel good about the guys that we've have here in the locker room before I got here. So I think the team's in a good place. I love the way they work. I love their attitude. And so we're going to see what we're all about. And the best part about it is we get to put pads on and go play football and get to show people whether we're up to the task or not. And I think that our guys are, and I'm excited to see that.
Late signing for you guys is Jaron Christian.
What's that one more time?
It's another late signing for you guys was Jaron Christian. I
Yep.
think that's how you pronounce his name. What did you guys like about him? And is there any chance he gets a shot at right tackle? I know he's been more left than the.
No, yeah, those guys, the guys that we've added are all going to have opportunities. We've added some veteran tackles, guys that my dad's got some experience with as well. So that's always a plus. But guys that have played, I think that helps. They help guys that have been in the fire and know what it looks like, and have played football. So you need every lineman usually. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how the life is in the NFL, is that you're going to have injuries. You're going to have guys that have to step up and play. And so we're trying to get as many of those guys that can help us as we can.
Prior to weight at all, or is he more strictly left? Or?
I'll say this: the best tackle that we have will play on the right, and whatever that looks like. If you're not starting a right tackle, they got to still be able to play both. So if you're the swing or you're one of those backup tackles, they're going to play on both sides. So I wouldn't pin any of those guys down to one side at this point. As we get going more, you may see something settle in that way. But to start, they're going to be able to play both sides. Go ahead, Jerry.
Between putting in an offense and bringing along a young quarterback, and yet at the same time knowing that those same mistakes, if they happen in a game, could be incredibly costly. How do you manage that in training camp?
Yeah, that's a good question. The ability to test in practice for a quarterback, a throw, a tight window throw, maybe he wouldn't make in a game. You have to put a little bit of faith and trust in the quarterback that they're going to try some things in practice and it's encouraged to, with the understanding that maybe if that was a game, you might not make that throw. Now the trust comes in is that if it really is a game, would you still make that throw? We don't know that, until you actually get out there and play. But I think Will's got a pretty good grasp, and Mason and Malik as well, about when it's appropriate to be more risky and more aggressive than maybe you might be in a normal game on a 1st and 10 than you are in a 7-on-7 period in practice. And so there is an experimentation that they're allowed. There's some freedom there, but we always coach it afterwards. Like that's good. I'm glad you decided to try that. Just understand that if this was, 1st and 10 in the first quarter of the first game, we're probably going to check this ball down. And they work through. That's on them to work through. But we coach that part of it when they're in those positions.
Our coaching staffs here have awarded guys for off-season work. Do you recognize players for now or during the season?
We did not for the off-season part. It just wasn't. We were more concerned about just trying to get everything off the ground and new strength staff and new coaching staff and all that. There will be things in the season, players of the game and players of the week and all that will award. There's some parking spots out there that might be open that are really close to the door. That might be part of it. But we will do those things when the season rolls around. We did not do any of that in the off season, more focused on getting our systems off the ground and kind of every phase of the building.
You talked about how there have been so many things on your plate for the last 7 months or whatever it is. One, just how excited are you to be to this day to have a team here to start the season? And two, what was your message to them when you first met them?
Our first official team meeting is after this. So that'll be the messaging when I get there. But I'm I get to certain points in the summer and you can't wait to get started again, and it's always my favorite time of year is when training camp starts. Obviously there's optimism and things are good and it's exciting. It's a fun time of year. I love training camp. It's one of my favorite parts of football. So to be here and be the head coach of the Titans in my first year and my first training camp is pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie to you. And I'm excited to get going. And again, it's a pretty cool moment for me to be able to be up here talking about training camp. And it won't always be this exciting and this optimistic, but it is right now, and I'm going to enjoy it.
All right, that's Brian Callahan, head coach, Tennessee Titans, the opening day of training camp. So a couple of things that were noteworthy. Let's catch up and step away for just a moment. Talking about this afternoon as the Titans get it going here. 615-737-1025. Phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Willy and DMase continues after this.
All right, so I've got ready to roll.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time now. And if you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss, people. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you, no one else but you. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
Back here on Willy and DMase, General Manager Rand Carthon now at the podium for the Tennessee Titans on opening day of training camp.
Are you done at safety with Adams, or are you still looking at other safeties to bring in?
I mean, we're looking at other people at all positions. We were just talking, about bringing some guys in just to kick some tires and, see where guys are. Our roster isn't set. Obviously, we don't have to have the roster set till September. So we're always looking to improve at every position.
Fits on this team, and maybe what role do you envision for him this year?
Oh, he's definitely fit. Obviously, it's the early part of his career, he was under Denard. Now, Denard wasn't the coordinator per se, but someone that he's very familiar with, as well as Steve Jackson and Frank Bush. And so we have the opportunity to bring a guy in who's played at a very high level in this league. And we feel that, we keep him healthy and get him out there on the field, he can continue to make those plays. And, a guy like Hook, having Hook, still here gives us the versatility to bring guys in, whether it's a strong or a free, because Hook can play an interchangeable spot. How big
a concern is that recent health issue?
I mean, it's always a concern. That's one of the things when we're talking about bringing guys in, and A-Rob is, and BG, all those guys we're looking at the health. That's the main thing. There have been guys here that we've brought in to sign and just couldn't get to that point where we felt comfortable with the health. I think the way our deal is structured with them, it's a prove it deal for us and a prove it deal for him. And I know Jamal, I know how he's intrinsically wired. He wants to prove to the world and to everybody that he can stay healthy and still play at a high level. And it's our job, as a training staff with Todd and Matt and Mike and those guys to make sure he's out there on the field as much as possible.
How do you feel about the state of the pass rush right now, and how much can this defense maybe make up for any deficiencies there by blitzing?
It's just like anything else when you're playing the game of football, especially the pass rush. If you don't have, those fastballs off the edge, you got to find different ways to get there. I know one thing about Denard, our defense is going to be aggressive. Whether we had Lawrence Taylor and Pat Swillen rushing opposite of each other, we're going to still be aggressive and come after people. But it is what it is. Still got to improve the pass rush, whether that's on the edge, whether that's interior. However, we got the guys that we feel can cover people, and so I think that'll help the rush as well. But again, just something that we're always looking to improve.
I guess for both you and Anthony, you're talking about kicking tires on some players. Are there certain positions you want to see how things go in camp before deciding, hey, we need to go out and get this player at this position, that position? And when is that day? How long do you give a position group a chance to establish itself before you look around maybe somewhere else?
Yeah, I think, you're coming in and you feel good about the roster you've put together so far. And I think as you go through camp and you evaluate, and then you start making decisions from there, if you want to, maybe explore another position, bring some guys in, work them out. But I think as you go through it, training camp, make those decisions as you go.
And I'll follow that up. I've probably over the last week or two spoken to maybe 2 or 3 GMs around the league, just going through our rosters, where you're heavy, where you're light. There are going to be some teams and some guys that show up in the preseason. There are going to be some positions where we have, where we're heavy. So it's not just in terms of signing free agents. There are going to be trade opportunities. As of right now, we're sitting at the 7th spot in the claim order. Plan on taking advantage of that, being able to claim some guys that come free, at some point. So, like I said, we're always looking, and we're going to always do whatever we got to do to improve this team.
What are your thoughts on Sweat and where he is and how he's progressed through the offseason and your outlook for immediately with camp?
Yeah, so, I had a lot of conversations with Sweat this offseason. He's and it was more so about, making sure that when he comes back, his mind and his body's right. Because I think sometimes as a rookie, you come in and you don't realize how fast training camp comes. And then once it gets here, how long the season is. And just making sure that, he was doing the right things this offseason to make sure he comes back in the right mind space, and also physically. And then also just having general conversations about him. He was in Houston when the hurricane came through, and just making sure his family and him was okay.
Defensive line, aside from Jeff, even in years past, it's always been a group that's been deep and a group that's had a lot of, guys who have experience like Nico. You don't have as much of that this year. What's your evaluation of some of these up and coming guys like McClendon and Bohanna that maybe getting more of a shot this year?
Yeah, they get their opportunity. It's just like everything else. Like you said in the past, you've had a bunch of great D linemen, but even those guys at some point were young and had to prove themselves and earn a spot. And it's just the way the league rolls. It's I don't want to say this sounds bad, but like kind of out with the old in with the new. These guys get their opportunity, and I know TK's up for the challenge. I know Big Q and Coburn, like all those guys, and Marlon Davison. These guys want opportunities, and they're going to have the opportunity to do so. I think all these guys grew this offseason. It's been good to see them run, going out there a little bit ago and seeing these guys move around, and you can tell it's a different group. I think even Jeff, like it doesn't get talked about as much, but like Jeff's leadership, and the way he's like really, it was always like Jeff was the leader of the D-line group. And then now you feel Jeff is not only the leader of the D-line group and the defense, but the whole team, and you feel it and you see it. And, the way he goes is the way the group goes, just not in terms of on the field, but off the field as well, and how he handles his business. And so he set a great example for those guys, so they have something to follow.
Brandon, do you feel like with the assistants that, your defensive coordinator hired and obviously Brian looked at, there's so much trust put in a lot of them with just even some of the guys they have connections with, that they're bringing them in, that they will continue to develop them or maybe make them a better player where they couldn't get as much out of there? Like, how much of that trust played into a part with those assistants?
No, our assistant coaches, you guys have heard me talk about it. Like I'm excited to see these guys work and see these guys, get on the grass. Like that's the exciting part. I believe these guys really coach ball. I've worked with a few of them. Some of them I admired from afar. But these guys are a talented group of dudes who know how to coach ball and know how to maximize, players' abilities. And, it's not just me hyping them up. You just look at their history and it says it, so for using relationships to get those guys, like we talked about earlier with Jamal and, players come in with trust in coaches, right? And that helps. And it kind of, alleviates some of the initial wall to get through that the coaches would normally have to. And it puts the players in a position to be the purveyors of the message, for the coach. The coach, they know what the coach is expecting, and now they can come in the room and kind of let guys know, whether it's, a young guy getting ripped by a coach and not knowing how to respond, and, having the vet who's been with the coach, giving them a little pro tip on how to deal with it and handle that. Like that helps us. And that allows, not only our position room, but the whole team to grow.
Rand, there was a lot of discussion just around where Traylon stood with you guys during the offseason, during the spring, and just with the guys you guys brought in like Tyler and Calvin and whatnot. Just how have you seen him maybe handle all that to this point and just kind of his approach up to this point?
I think Traylon's really grown up. He sent us a picture, of during the offseason, this little break here, showing his new physique. He came in and he really took to heart, the conversation that he had with myself and with Coach Callie. And he's completely bought in. I've, messaged with him, throughout the offseason. And I think he's in a really good spot. And, again, we added Tyler and we added Calvin. Obviously, D-Hop was here, but for a young guy like that, he has vets that he can learn from. And again, with him and his size and his speed and his explosiveness, and now, he can be an X, he can be a Z. Tyler's primary spot is probably going to be the F. You know what I mean? So I'm expecting, things from him and just his unselfishness. I know it was some talk about him taking gunner reps, but that was because he wanted to, and he wants to prove that he can stay healthy and play top level football.
You've been very patient, I guess, with Caleb Farley. I guess you feel like he's in a position to compete for a spot on this roster. And what's your message to him as he tries to stick?
It's like you said, man, just, be out there as much as you can. Obviously, in order to make this team, you have to be healthy and you have to be there. Really encouraged by Caleb and his commitment to the process, right? He's had every reason, whether it's on the field, off the field, to step away and take breaks, but he's dealt with a ton of adversity. He's taken it head on, and every day he shows up to work ready to go. So you can't do anything but respect that and admire that. But just like everybody else on the team, he's going to have to stay healthy and show that he earned a spot on this team.
Smith, Sam Somerville, long list of acquisitions and promotions. Can you maybe speak to the changes that have taken place this offseason under you and your staff, and maybe how that helps the team?
Yeah, I think it's just like the Rosh, and I'll let A-Rob go into it a little bit more, but just like how we treat the players, we're always looking to improve, our personnel department and get talented people in here, that's going to help us grow and help us identify players. Obviously, we all sit and talk and look at the first round picks, so you're not unearthing anyone there. Those guys kind of stand out. But, for us and for most teams and the teams that I've been a part of, hitting on the draft is you have to do that. But then being able to find those undrafted guys, that allow you to, steal depth, on the back end helps you as well. And it's not me that's out there, scouring the country looking for those guys. It's the people you mentioned, the AJs, the Sams, the Keenan Agnews, the Kalen Reese. It's those guys that are out there doing it. So we need as much top level talent there as well.
All right, that's Rand Carthon, his press conference, along with Anthony Robinson, his longtime right-hand man that he brought along with him when he took the job. And that last answer was interesting, bringing in a lot of players. He's got his guys that are starting to come in there. There was a long list of them released last week, and you're not going to remember all of these names. One of them is Alonzo Highsmith's son.
Yes.
I can remember Alonzo playing for sure.
Ohio State grad.
Yeah. So let's take a break. When we come back, we'll sort out what we think are the biggest takeaways from the first press conference for Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon. And then we'll talk football with Tim Hasselback later in the hour, about 1:30. So we got some really good stuff coming in our last hour. Keep it right here on 102.5 The Game, ESPN Radio Nashville.
To help Brian and his staff do what they want to accomplish.
Well, I mean, that's our job. You know what I mean? No matter how you look at it, kind of going back to like what Nick was saying, just in terms of final say, like whether whoever has final say, like our role in personnel, we're in the service business. We're here to provide a service for the coaches and be able to identify players that give them an opportunity to be the best coaches and implement their systems. So for us, like we talked about a couple months ago, the big thing was being able to get the coaching staff in fresh, get our scouts in, and we all got on the same accord, immediately, just in terms of what it looks like to play in those systems on offense, defense, and special teams, and the coaches being able to clearly, give us those instructions of what it looks like. And so we spent a lot of time working on it as a group. And then A-Rob and Salgi and the guys put together a scout school for the scouts, to go through every position and what it looks like. And, so for us, we have the clear instruction. We know what it looks like, and now we can go out and effectively do our job.
Tell Stoney started with no designation, I guess your hope that he can work himself back into a position where he can punt for you in week 1?
Yeah. And I think, and shouts out to Stoney. He's probably spent more time in this building than anybody, this offseason. He was legitimately 7 days a week. You come in on a Sunday not expecting to see someone, and you see Stoney walking through because he's getting treatment or he's doing things. So it was important for him to be back. And, the work he's put in, he's been punting on his own, has been kicking the ball, really well. So the next step in his rehab process is, being able to feel some pressure. Obviously you're not hitting him or touching him in practice, but that's the mental part that he has to take next. And if he's on PUP, he can't get that, and so it was important for us to be able to, put him out there so he can start to get the feel of the game. And it's the natural, next step in his recovery.
And what went into his son, what you guys like about him, and kind of could he even, be in the mix as far as the right tackle is concerned?
Yeah, he's versatile. He's played both tackle spots. He's played guard spots. And a lot of it was on a whim, him coming in as a backup and being forced out there, and he's played pretty well. It kind of goes back to the question I was asked earlier about coaching and, the relationships. He's played under big coach before. And so, again, you have a guy, our room is relatively young, in there. So now you have a purveyor of the message. He's kind of one of the elder statesmen, if you will, in the room, and he knows what it takes to play and to work every day under Bill Callahan. So he'll be able to carry that message. But he's a guy that, in the grand scheme of things, we got 2 spots that are, going to be competitive, and everybody on this roster is going to have a chance to earn those spots. So as long as he stays healthy and he's out there on the field, he has a chance to start.
As you start the year, any thought on DeAndre Hopkins and extending him? Have you talked to Kelton and those guys about that at all?
We've identified a number of guys that, we'd like to continue to move forward with, and eventually take care. But you guys have heard me, we're going to keep family business in terms of talking about their contracts and what's next for them. But we as a staff, we have identified some guys that, we'd like to have here, long term.
Is DeAndre one of them?
He's one of the guys that's on our team, and and we've talked about a number of guys on the team to have those conversations. One thing I appreciate about D-Hop is if you guys have gotten to know him, D-Hop is straightforward, and and D-Hop and I, we can have some straightforward conversations, and we have, and we do, and so D-Hop knows how we feel about him. And I think that's a big thing, especially for a veteran, at this stage in his career. And I think the way he's shown up here, the way he's bought into a new staff kind of shows how he feels about us and what we have going.
That's good. One quick, did you get, when you were down in Mobile, did you get to interact with Kyrie Jackson at all? And if so, what are your thoughts on, the tragedy?
Yeah, so we, how we do the interviews at night with a lot of the players. He was one of the guys that came through that, and interaction with him he was a good kid. He had a good interview with us. Sad what happened. Very, very sad what happened. Heart goes out to his family, to the Vikings organization. But our interactions with him at the Senior Bowl, it was good.
Steve, what the last one? You obviously had a huge task this offseason to, 1, upgrade the talent on the roster, but 2, fit personnel to new schemes in all 3 phases. After going through that process in 7 months, as you start training camp, how close did you get to maybe the dream board that you would have had up 7 months ago?
I don't know that you ever hit the dream board, and we talked about it. There were a couple guys that we targeted during the free agency process that we didn't get, but it allowed us to, move in a different direction and get someone else that we didn't anticipate being able to get. I never went into it with a that we had and knowing where we had to get to for that, but then being able to take advantage of where we were from a cap space, to get as many good guys as possible. I feel really good about the work that we did and the guys that we've acquired, because I think they fit us and who we are and what we're going to be. So I feel really good about that. But as you know, the process isn't over. We got to set the roster, here in September. But like I said, we're sitting there with the 7th spot in the claiming order for a few weeks into the season. So we're going to, keep trying it and keep working until we get the right mix.
Were
you offered a fourth that could have turned into a third for Derek last year?
No, I wasn't. I don't know where that came from. That's not my concern. But we had multiple teams, to call about Derek and offer something that wasn't worth taking or worth even considering. And I communicated that with Derek during that time. But no, we never agreed with anybody to do anything to move anybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, a little
peek behind the curtain.
A little shot there at
whoever.
I guess the Ravens,
Yeah.
because they were the ones that said the deal was on the table for a trade at the trade deadline last year between the Ravens and the Titans that would have involved Derrick Henry going to the Ravens for a 4th round pick that could have became a 3rd. That was that last drop in, and Rand Carthon saying no, that was not the case.
But he did say
that they got a lot of offers.
They got a lot of offers, but it just wasn't worth it. So that 4th round could have been one of those offers that wasn't worth it, and they decided to keep Derrick Henry. So I guess 2 things can be true. DeCosta saying, yeah, there was a deal on the table, but just because you sent over a proposal and a deal that laid on the table doesn't mean that we decided that we were going to take it. You offered it. We looked at it and said, nah, we're going to keep Derrick Henry. So, I mean, both things can be true. I can't see. One, I can't see DeCosta,
just
lying.
making it up out of
just
thin
making
air.
it up out of thin air. But
That
then
was
I
pretty
can't
specific.
see. Yeah, I can't see Rand Carthon just saying no, that didn't happen. It had to be somewhere in the middle where, yeah, you got the proposal and was like, like Rand said, it wasn't good enough. No, we're gonna keep Derrick.
Yeah,
So,
because I would say that the way that the article was worded,
yes,
was kind of implied. It didn't say directly, but it implied that
the deal
Rand
was
Carthon was okay with it, and
but
then the
somebody
higher
else.
ups,
Yes,
nixed it.
Yes, that's what it
So
makes it.
that's
yeah.
what. And so when Rand says, "I don't know where that came from," somebody probably tipped him, has told him about that article.
Of
I would
course,
think.
of course, somebody.
It
told him
sounded
about
like
the
he
article.
wasn't completely taken aback by that question.
No, when
Somebody-
that article came out, somebody took it to his office or texted him and say, "Did you see this article?"
I'm sure.
So I mean, yeah. So I can see it both guys having truth in their answer. One, there was a contract we sent over, a proposal, contract, whatever you want to call it, and the other was like, nah, we didn't agree to anything. No.
Yeah. So that, of course, is water under the bridge.
Yeah, it's water
at this
under the
point.
bridge.
Okay,
Yeah, it don't
so
make a difference now.
let's deal with what I think came out of today's press conferences. First, Brian Callahan, then General Manager Rand Carthon with a little assist from Anthony Robinson, who was fielding some of the questions as well, the assistant GM. You're listening to Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. So there were a couple of things. You have to weed through some of the philosophical questions and, how you're going to handle practices. Here are a couple of bullet points, I would say. One, Brian Callahan says he's going to play the starters in the preseason game. That looks like a pretty decent change from
What's
the
been
previous staff. He said the starters will play.
So he's not going to put the quarterback in and run the ball three times
and
and
then
then take him out. Yeah, he's not, it doesn't.
Now, he
seem
didn't
like
say
he's
how
gonna do
much
that.
they're going to play,
Yeah.
but he said they will play all 3 games.
and
he
they
said.
and they should, because to me this roster isn't at a point where we're good. We don't need to see our veteran guys. No, you need to see all of them, because this team, you need to know what type of team you have. When real ball is being played, and I know it's only a preseason, but you can get a glimpse of what you can do and some things you can, how you can do it and who fits where. So will they play a lot? I would tend to guess they will not play a lot, but just having them in the game for maybe a quarter to a half, that'd be fine.
Okay, another thing that sort of happened late in the press conference that I didn't really see coming. It looked like the press conference was almost over. Jim Wyatt asked about a general question of, are there any players that you would like to maybe extend? And Jared, I do think caught Rand a little bit by surprise by saying, is DeAndre Hopkins one of the players that you want to extend? And Rand Carthon kind of thought about how does he want to answer that, and quickly said, he said, DeAndre is one of the players on our team, and then kind of said, look, DeAndre and I have conversations. He knows how we feel about him. How did you interpret that? Is that a yes? Like, he didn't want to answer it, and he shouldn't have to answer it. It did sound to me like that is something that they have to decide. I think it's a very good question because it goes along with what we've been doing to set the table where they are on the roster. DeAndre Hopkins is an older player that probably is on the back nine of his career. This is not a team that looks like it's ready to compete now, but you need those support pieces for a young quarterback. So do you want him for next year, or is he a trade piece, much like Derrick Henry theoretically could have been a trade piece last year? So how would you answer, how would you interpret in the wide receiver
translator?
The wide receiver translator.
I translate that to being one, I think he was caught just a tad bit off guard, in a sense. But then the way he answered it, I'm not sure D-Hop is one of those guys. I think he's probably leaning toward more younger guys that have been in the system, that have been on the roster. And, I'm thinking of who's a young guy that's been here. Hell, they don't have many.
See, that's the problem.
Roger McQuarrie.
Right.
I would see Roger McQuarrie.
That's the biggest flaw on the roster is they don't have a lot of homegrown guys that are on the verge of signing a second big contract with the team. They are very low in that area. So you're trying to compensate. There's two ways you can do it. You can throw a lot of free agent money at veterans and hope that you can find the fountain of youth and keep those guys going, but they're fairly expensive.
But
you got to have young guys really young guys that haven't done much yet pop.
But I'm sure the contracts that they're discussing are not big money contracts.
Right.
Because they don't have big money contracts. And
Well,
I'm
okay,
sure
let's
Will
just say
Levis
Jared-
is one of those guys too that they're sort of thinking about because he was a second round pick and his contract is coming up pretty soon. Here.
Right. Well,
You know?
let's get back to D-Hop for a second. Jared asked the question because he was going to talk about it some on his show, and I heard a little bit of what he did yesterday. He painted the dilemma. If you're Rand Carthon,
it's not a dilemma.
Well, Jared made the argument:
Yeah.
do you lock him up for another year now, so you know that Will Levis, who already has got some games under his belt with a
What if he
great
gets hurt?
veteran, do you want to lock him up now, or do you want to let it play out until the trade deadline, and maybe decide: do I want to trade him or do I want to keep him? At that point,
I don't think they're.
I think you've got a little time. I don't think you're in a hurry.
I don't think they're thinking about a trade right now.
Certainly not. But you don't have to decide, do you want him next year?
Yeah, you don't have to
right?
decide anything. You sign him to another contract early. He gets hurt, then what? What do you do as an organization? Now you're stuck with the contract or the extension that you've already presented to him, and he signed, and you figure he would sign. Smart organizations, when it comes to older players, they wait unless that player is just playing completely off the charts, and then you want to try to get him early so you don't have to pay him then late. Smart organizations just wait. They're not in a rush. What if he goes out there and Ridley's your number one? What if he ends up just having the numbers of a number two? Say if Ridley has 1,000 yards, he has 700 yards, somewhere around there. And then you've probably already signed him to a contract that is paying him north or close to 20 million, if not over 20 million.
This is the thing,
and that's why
the
you got
rising tide of wide receiver salaries.
Everybody's screaming about signing. Y'all don't understand where this team is at. And I don't think, take your bias out of it with liking a guy, because I like D-Hop too. And if you were telling me, if you're giving me some insurance that, okay, he will be healthy for the next 2 to 3 seasons, and these are the numbers that you're getting for an aging guy, then I'm like, okay, I'm all in. Never had any injuries. He's good. I'm all in. Let's go. Let's sign a contract. But you can't promise me that. So why then would I can talk about a contract like if he does this, if this happens, if he stays healthy, then there's a potential for us to re-sign him to another 2-year contract, which essentially is a 1-year contract. So we can do that. but there's no rush. There's no, again, somebody need to explain to me what the rush would be. Like, I can see if it was 20.
You can't go anywhere.
Yeah, I can see if it was 25, 27. Okay, let's lock him up. Let's do it now because it's only going to get expensive once the end of the season comes. But he's not. What is the rush? You went and got your number one receiver in Calvin Ridley. You went and got Tyler Boyd that knows this offense. You have D-Hop that has been here with the quarterback from last year. Let's see how this thing evolves. There's no need to the rush. What if he gets hurt? He blows out his knee. God forbid he doesn't do that. But what if he has a major injury?
Yeah.
Then what? Now you know what everybody's saying. No.
Why did you
know
sign
what? Why did you sign? The same people that are saying sign him now. Again, if he was 25, 26 years old, cool, do it. But he's 30 and he's getting older. You sign him now. He has the injury, and everybody's screaming, "Oh, fire ran! Look at him signing more guys that was already injured when they got here." Right. And look at their reason. No.
I don't think the franchise
allow it to play out.
I don't think the franchise is going to sink or swim whether you
That's
extend
what I'm
him
saying.
for one more year or not. I think you could play it out. Jared's point was that you were one of the receivers that had a very good career post age 30.
Yes.
And he might be falling into that category. So is he a horse you can bet on? I see the argument, and the whole idea is you've got to
But our
chance.
games are different.
Yeah.
D-Hop and my game was totally different. You know, what they were asking him to do, they were asking me to do something totally different. I never had any injuries. One injury that put me out 2 games in my whole career.
Right.
One injury that put me, not to say I wasn't injured. I broke a damn scapula, tore rotator cuff, dislocated this, and still managed not to miss but 3 plays. And that's because I had to go to the locker room, get, fixed up, and then come back out. You have to be very careful, again, because I go back to this. They just signed Calvin Ridley to this huge contract. You got Tyler Boyd for a year. You don't want to make the mistake. You want to get younger. Everybody in your division is getting younger, and nobody seems to realize that. They're getting younger at the most important positions. And you what? You want to stay status quo? Again, if D-Hop, I'm not saying don't sign him back. But what I'm saying is, why rush to sign him back now? They may sign him back. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, what would be the rush to sign him back right now? Are you worried about paying him $2-3 extra million? Hell no. It's $1 billion corporation or $1 billion business. Paying him an extra $2 or $3 million at the end of the season, that's no big deal.
Let's take a related note, and you tell me your wide receiver translation of this one, the Tyler Boyd. Well, Boyd is a related guy, but the question was about Burks, Treylon Burks. Here are the quotes. He's really grown up. He sent us a picture of him with his, quote, new physique. He took things to heart, sort of implying that we had a sort of a talk of, look, this is where we're going. We're bringing in Boyd. I would presume that the theme of it is something along those lines, but you've got to prove yourself. He said he is bought in. And the other little nugget that maybe you can help translate is that Burks will play X and Z. Boyd is playing primarily F, which kind of implies that Boyd isn't taking reps away from Burks. That's kind of how I saw it, but tell me what you hear when you hear that stuff.
Wide receiver translator.
What did I...
Because this goes along the lines of
I know what you're
Hopkins
saying. Yes,
and Ridley.
But
How do you use Burks?
What did I tell everybody when they signed Tyler Boyd? I said this means nothing for Treylon Burks. If D-Hop goes down, guess who's going in the game? Treylon Burks. Didn't I say that before?
Yeah.
If Calvin Ridley goes down, guess who's going in? Treylon Burks. Didn't I say that before?
You did.
I said that before. They are putting people, when I say things, I'm telling you because I've been through it and I understand it. When coach says or Rand says, listen, he's going to play the X, he's going to play the Z. All right. What does that mean? That means whenever that person goes out, Treylon's going in. Not Nick Westbrook-Akine, not whoever else they have in there. No, it's him. When DeAndre Hopkins goes out, you know who's going in? Traylon Burks. You know who was in that same position in his rookie season? I was.
Derek Mason. Yeah.
And who was in that same position all the time? I was. When that guy went down, Mason. Stecco said, Coach Stecco, and I love him to death. He was one of the guys that was critical in my growth as a player in this league. When I first got there, I think I told the story. He said, here, you learn X, you learn Z, and you learn H. And I'm thinking, I was the 4th round pick. Why I got to learn all this stuff? Shouldn't I just be learning one position and let me get used to that? I wasn't your first receiver taken, but he was doing it for a reason. He understand I had the mental capacity to learn all of these, and that if anyone went down, I was inserted in. Derek Russell went down. Guess who was thrown in the game? Derek Mason. Why? Because he knew all these positions. That's Traylon Burks. They want to find out if Traylon Burks can play, if he can help this organization. Here's the caveat to that. If he shows that he can be a guy, D-Hop will not be signed back.
That's why you win.
Yeah. If he doesn't, then now D-Hop becomes more of a figure in what we're going to do moving forward.
It's a much better pathway to what you need your roster to be if Burks emerges here.
Exactly.
And so you don't like what you've seen the first couple of years, but this is new. I hope they give him a pathway.
Well, they're giving it to him.
They're
giving it to him. You play X,
like it.
You play Z.
It sounds like there's some optimism.
Exactly. As much as we rotate these receivers, as much as I hate it, as much as we rotate these receivers, you're going to play a lot. You're going to get your opportunity. Make the best of. That's what they're telling them. You've been in great shape before. We understand that. You bought in. You bought in last year. That's what they're telling you. What we need to do is see it on the field. That's all Rand Carthon is saying. Yeah, he's bought in. Yeah, I've talked to him. Yeah, he's sent physiques. Yeah, all that is good, Traylon Burks. I love all of that. But you know what you need to do? Stay healthy and produce on the field when we get going. That's all.
A couple of more notes that I think are worth mentioning. And we're going to talk to Tim Hasselbeck, get his thoughts on some of this stuff here in a few minutes. But they did say that only 2 players will start practice on the PUP. So that right there, I'm sure, is something that, not that they'll pat themselves on the back, but that is something that they set out to do. Mm-hmm. How many times in a row in training camp have we sit there and say, well, this guy's out, this guy's out, this guy's out, they got all these They were telling us not to panic in the OTAs. Mm-hmm. Only 2 players will start on PUP. Colton Dowell, who was on the reserve PUP. So he's the one guy.
He got hurt at the end of the season. Yeah.
Nicholas Petit-Frere, active PUP, and Brian Callahan said it should only be, quote, a few days before he's in there. So he'll be in the mix with a bunch of people trying to sort out the offensive line. And we don't have enough time to try to sort out what all that means right now. But he did say that competition is going to go on maybe until the week of the first game before they decide who is going to start. They want the old-fashioned throw them all in there, see who emerges. And he said, I hope it doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
But there is going to be some competition. He said, you might see some starters one day who are our backups the next day. We're going to try some different things. So that is something to note. And I don't know what Jared's going to do today. He probably had a lot of time parked for Devondre Sweat to not be cleared to play.
Oh, he passed the test.
But, it was like the Ron Burgundy when he tried to news team assemble and his news team was right there. And they were like, well, what about Devondre Sweat? He's good to go. He's good to go. No issues. No issues. He's good to go. He's right there. He's good.
That's all you need.
So after all that, now we'll see, right? Everybody's now going to watch. Can he string together practices? Can he stay out there? But
at least he
Anthony
got
Robinson, look, I was talking to him. We went through the process. We talked about him as a person.
Mentally and physically. Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, he has prepared himself to be ready to go in day one. So hats off to him for that. Yeah.
Kudos to that.
Because that was not a given.
Yeah, because that was the biggest sort of question mark. Not whether he can play or not. We knew the dude's an Outlook Trophy winner. He's a flat out stud. He was a stud in college. The question mark was, can he keep his weight down? And can he pass the test? Well, he passed the test.
Sounds like to pass the test. Yeah. And Ryan Stonehouse, pleasant surprise. I think I was I was thinking he might be on PUP. They said he worked very hard in the offseason. He should be good to go. They want him to feel pressure. The next step of the process, he's punting, but they want him to be around, have it more game-like conditions. So Ryan Stonehouse is obviously a weapon who can boot it. The punter who got injured in the infamous game where the special teams coach got fired the next day for all those block punts and he got hurt. He is good to go to start training camp. All right, let's regroup. Let's talk to Tim Hasselbeck. We'll talk about some of the other things Brian Callahan discussed with his offense in his opening press conference on opening day of Titans training camp. Stay tuned. We're coming back here on Willy and DMase. Back here on Willy and DMase here on 102.5 The Game. And it is time to talk football with Tim Hasselbeck. Willy and DMase, of course, brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and up in Tennessee to bet. Opening day of Titans training camp. We just heard from Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon. A lot of places to go with Tim. Just a couple of quick headlines if you joined us late. Devondre Sweat did pass, and he is ready to roll, quote unquote, ready to roll for the first day of training camp. That was something we all were wondering. Only Colton Dowell and Nick Petit-Frere are on PUP, but Nicholas Petit-Frere, who's in the running for the right tackle position, is on active PUP. Brian Callahan saying it probably should be only a few days before he is able to take the field and practice. So that will be something to focus on. So let's start there, Tim. When the quarterbacks know that there are some good competitions going on the offensive line, how does that affect practice day in and day out?
I think they know it typically means it's going to be more intense, right? A lot of times when you get to training camp and coaches will talk about competition and guys fighting for jobs, I can't tell you the number of teams that I've been on where, you look at it and you're like, yeah, I mean, like how many are really up for grabs? Like, are there 3 positions up for grabs? Like, even in some cases, making the roster. It's why one of the most dangerous things you can do as a player, if you're not one of those guys, is like start counting spots. But I think generally speaking, when there is, like legitimate competitions, look, this is how you make your living. And so with that being the case, you expect there to be good energy, good effort, good attention to detail, honestly, a good product in terms of, how somebody performs. So when that's going on up front, I actually think that it helps increase the level of intensity, at every practice. And then in terms of how it affects the quarterback, look, the quarterback shouldn't be concerned about like, hey, can this guy hold up or not hold up? I think if anything, you should be encouraged by the fact that, guys are, having to prove that they're earning a position in front of you. They're not just being placed there.
Brian Callahan did say, he said, be ready to watch. There will be days where the starting unit is different when we have a competition. He says, we're going to go through it for as long as it takes until we find the right 5. Have you seen different ways that teams have done that? Do they start with guys and let them play their way out, or have you seen them mix it up from time to time? I'm wondering how they arrive. What's the best way to arrive at the top 5?
Well, I think you have to mix it up because you just think about what you carry during the season and then what you carry on any given game day, right? Like you don't have 10 offensive linemen in uniform on game day. So you don't have a backup at every single spot. And so I do think the best thing to do is be prepared to have situations where you say, okay, our starting left guard might also be our second best right tackle. And so rather than just the guy going in at right tackle, who's quote unquote the backup right tackle, it actually is better to put a guard, in that left guard spot and then move that guy to right tackle. Or, our left tackle becomes our right tackle because, or vice versa, our right tackle becomes our left tackle because we feel more comfortable with someone going to right tackle. So I do think it's a good idea to be in a situation where like the puzzle pieces are, somewhat endless in terms of, how you can fit a group together. And obviously cohesiveness and getting guys, enough reps together is important, but at the same time, like you need to make sure that you're always putting your best 5 that can play together out on the field.
We'll talk with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst and head football coach of the Innsworth Tigers. Now, we had a conversation, and Rand talked about potential guys that he could potentially sign or guys contracts they have been talking about this off season. And I'm sure it has been veteran guys or guys that are still on their first contract in regards to rookie contracts. How do you think you approach, because you've talked to GMs and you've talked to head coaches, how do you approach a veteran guy that is sort of aging out of a team that you want to get younger? Do you typically, are they looking to sign guys early in the season, or are they typically waiting to see what goes on and then sign a guy back?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been a few different approaches to this. I think the way the Eagles used to do it was, I guess they still kind of do. I think the Chiefs are doing it, now to an extent. Like, if there's a young guy and I'm like, I know he can play, like, I'm getting on it now. Like, I'm signing the deal now, because the way the deal is going to age, it's going to end up working out. And, and I think that, veteran players, kind of to your point, guys that are aging out, like, they see what's happened. Like, you don't have to tell them, right? Like, they end up, kind of seeing what's happening, at various positions when young guys get paid. And I think, and DMase, this. I mean, I was listening to the show talking about, injuries before the wide receiver translator, by the way, which is an amazing segment. But the reality is, like, like for you, like, you played a long enough time that there were times where you knew, like, hey, they drafted this young guy to take my job, right? And, like, nobody was coming up to you and be like, yeah, we think you've lost a step. Like, no one was telling you that. Like, they basically told you that when they drafted somebody at your position. And then what you did, and this is what good players do, is they go, yeah, that's great, and I'm actually going to play so much better than that young guy that you're going to have to re-sign me anyway. Like that's the business of this. And so I think, like, the old guy approach to it, I think, just has to be a totally different perspective.
Now, how much do you think, what's sort of the happy medium for Will Levis in regards to what Brian Callahan and that offensive staff is going to put on him right away? Because you want to take him slow, but not slow to a point where you're sort of holding back your offense because you're trying to get the quarterback acclimated to what you want done. And Brian Callahan talked about, knowing when to throw the ball and everything else, helping with his accuracy. But how much do you put on a quarterback early on in a new offense, as opposed to, holding back and sort of letting him work through it day by day?
Yeah, I don't think there has to be any restrictions that are coming from Will Levis. And here's why. His time with Liam Cohen, is going to, like, there's so much carryover in terms of similarities, scheme wise, timing wise, things like that. Even a volume of verbiage wise, even if it's not the same thing. Like, Will Levis is experienced. He's experienced a version of what he's going to get in this new Callahan West Coast offense, right? And so I don't think that he's going to be the one holding them back. Like, I think, if anything, it's going to be, hey, is our receiver room, like, hey, can we move on to the next thing? Like, our tight ends, can they move on, passing game concept wise? Or, like, I don't think the thing that's going to be the governor on how much volume they put in, I just don't think it's going to be Will Levis. I don't. I think he's a smart guy. He's been around a similar system. This is not year one; it's year two in the NFL. I think he's going to be able to handle it. And so, I think the bigger thing ends up being, okay, the rest of the offense, are they ready for more? And listen, when you're putting in a brand new system, it does take a little bit longer.
Now, did you ever tag along on a trip to Cabo with receivers and a quarterback, Tim, or did you ever take some?
Tim, like, I ain't taking nobody to Cabo. What are you talking about?
I mean, listen, it would not surprise me. I mean, Cabo maybe isn't luxurious enough for DMase.
I'd have had him in my backyard.
Did any of the starting quarterbacks you played with ever do anything like that? An Eli Manning or other players that you played with?
Like, host other guys for workouts and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I feel like guys always did. Like I feel like Don McNabb was doing that. You know, he trained in Arizona, and he'd get guys to go out there. You know, I always thought it was interesting. Like sometimes I'd be like, does that guy really want to go there? You know, like I say that, like, I think I first started thinking of it like when Patrick Mahomes was bringing guys down to Texas to train. And like, I don't know where they were, but I kind of just remember being like, that's interesting. Like if I were, you know, Travis Kelce, like, do I want to spend part of my off season in West Texas? Like, man,
Can I have some pictures of where we're going to be staying?
Can we go near some water or something?
Is there a pool down there?
Like, could you have found a different spot? You know, so look, I think it's great that guys do that. I think it's good for camaraderie. I think it's just good for the general relationship. It's obviously good to get to work, but I feel like the biggest benefit is just getting to know your teammate better.
Yeah, it is. We had a chance to do that. And you're right. Donovan used to do it all the time because Joe Flacco, myself, Anquan Bolden went there, and, you know, Fitzgerald was there.
Now, where is where?
That was Arizona.
Yeah,
right outside
not
of
West
Arizona.
Texas.
Yeah, it's not West Texas. It was right
so
outside
it was
of Arizona
nice
State.
layout.
Yeah, it was a nice layout. They had a nice layout up there.
Hey, here's what's crazy about it. I was actually just with Larry a couple weeks ago. Like, here's what's crazy about it. Larry, in the summertime, he goes to Minnesota. Like, you guys going to Arizona in the summertime. Like, that's the worst.
Wait a minute. Like, what are y'all doing? That's backwards.
Go the other way. Yeah.
Hey, Tim, the USA Today came out with their sort of, and this is the first one that I've seen, and Willie echoed the same thing as far as their predictions, Super Bowl and everything else. And I'm not going to get into the whole NFL. I'm just going to get into the AFC South. This is the first time that I've seen, and there hadn't been many, but if you listen to the talking heads, this is the first time I've seen that someone has picked opposite the Houston Texans. On this one, they have the Indianapolis Colts winning AFC South at 11-6, but they have Texans finishing third at 9-8. Why do you think there's so much? And listen, we can point at the quarterback in Richardson, and I get it, but he doesn't have enough time or task for me. How can you sort of reconcile or sort of defend this 11-6 and them winning AFC South, meaning the Colts?
Well, let me say this, and I'm going to preface this by saying, you know, I'm a parent of a Vanderbilt student. I'm pro all Vanderbilt sports. Look, there was a poll that I think some people voted Vandy to win the SEC.
Yeah, two people.
You sure that wasn't you?
They got two voters, so somebody
you and Willie.
Somebody's on the island with whoever.
Hey, listen, I might have been one of them. You never know. So I say, like, not being critical. Like, listen, anchor down. I'm gonna have my black and gold on, on Saturdays this fall. Okay, like, trust me, I'm in. Okay, I'm all in. But sometimes some of these voters get a little crazy. Okay, you do things that you wouldn't advise. So I guess some of that. But look, in terms of like the optimism on the Colts, I think because look, he's a freak. I mean, that Anthony Richardson is a freak. Like that, and I think that people are more encouraged than discouraged based on like the little.
He means that in a good way, people.
Yeah, like listen, like from a talent perspective, like he might be the most talented quarterback in the NFL. Like physically talented. So I think there's an element of that, that has people excited. And then I think what I would say beyond that is that is a pretty good roster. Some of the drama they were dealing with a year ago, they're not dealing with that anymore. And really the season kind of got a little bit out of sorts because of, the injury at quarterback and kind of finding their way. And then ultimately, like, they still were a team that was making some noise late in the year. And so I do think that they are a team that, listen, they could be way worse or they could be way better than they were a year ago. So to me, that's what someone voting in that way on them. Look, I don't expect the Texans to take a step back, though. I think it's too many things, and they've added too many other players that are proven players for them to take a step backwards.
Tim, real quick, before we let you go, Brian Callahan was asked about the two running backs, Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, in sort of a who's going to compete for the starter. He says, I don't look at these guys. He said, I look at them not competing with each other. I want to use them both. I look at both of them as starting players. Even said, I might use them together some. How do you see this tandem working? Because it's going to be a major question whether people have really centered in on it yet or not, because so much attention is on Levis. But in the post-Derrick Henry, there's a lot on those two guys to produce.
Yeah. Well, first off, now that I'm a coach, I'm totally stealing that coach speak answer.
Yes.
I mean,
take note.
I'm going to credit him the first time and then act like it's mine every time after that.
As long as you gave that credit one time.
It's in the
that's all
back
that
of the
matters.
book, the bibliography.
Listen, look, they're two very different backs. They're not the big bruiser that Derrick Henry was. It has to look different. They have to use both guys. And I think he's talking to them through the media when he answers that question to say, hey, man, like, don't get worked up about who takes the first rep because that doesn't mean you're going to get the most touches in a football game. Like, to me, that's what that is. That's a coach talking to his players through the media in a way to say, like don't get sideways on this thing. Like, you guys are both as valuable as the next guy and critical to our success. So, and then I think what that looks like is, I think both versatile players. And I think there's some things you can do in the run and pass game when you have guys that have unique skill sets, which both those guys have.
Quickly, we got to get you out of here. But when do y'all start up, Tim?
Hey man,
high school.
Like this is good. We actually go to training camp next week on Monday. Jeff Ferris, who's the new head coach at Austin P, gracious enough to host us out at Austin P for training camp. They have awesome facilities. They have a new indoor facility, and so our guys are excited to be out there, at training camp at Austin P, and then we'll come back and kick off our season on August 23rd.
Ching ching, you know who got money. You know who got money. I tell you, you can't hide money. You can't hide. Hold on, Tim. And Chase is gonna get real mad at me. But how many high schools go away for training camp?
Hey, listen, when you have, former, parents of students like Derek Mason, guys that vacation in the French Riviera, find a way
you can do what you want to.
Make it work.
You can take them anywhere.
Yeah,
I get it, Tim. I get it.
Hey, listen, by the way, Chase is never going to get mad at you for blowing through a break to keep me on long.
Oh, yeah, you're right about that. Y'all best friends.
They're best friends.
Yeah, my bad.
Tim, excellent stuff. Good timing coming up after the press conferences. There are a lot to chew on. We'll talk to you again next week, and best of luck as you get your team rolling.
Absolutely.
Thanks. See you guys.
All right, Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN. We'll come back and wrap things up and look ahead to Jared's show coming up next here on 102.5 The Game. Got to pass the baton to Jared Stillman. He was over at the press conference, so he'll be ready to break all this stuff down. I got a quick text I want to hit you with, DMase, before we sign off on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. He heard Rand Carthon say, I've been talking to GMs around the league at what positions we're deep in and what we're thin at, and then trying to bounce that off of other GMs. What are you guys looking for? What are you thick at? What are you thin at? What positions are the Titans deep at?
I would say wide receiver. The 3 frontline guys, and you got Nick Westbrook-Akine in there. You got to add Treylon Burks in there. I think they have some good depth at the wide receiver position, especially proven guys. And I'm talking about the top 3 guys.
Yeah.
Cornerback, there is some depth there in the secondary. Now that you added Adams, and again, you're still trying to figure out. It seems like he's going to be a starter the way. Rand sort of positioned the answer, saying like he's going to be a starter. So they do have depth in the back end, sort of the corners and the safety. I think that's the only 2 positions where they have depth.
Yeah. And
other than special teams.
And on the other side, he said, we have the 7th position for the next several weeks on any waiver. Anybody that hits the waiver wire, they have the 7th crack. And so he did say he will be on the lookout. Maybe there's an edge rusher. Maybe there's another offensive lineman they like.
That's where they got to get some people.
Yeah, so they're looking for depth. There's no question about it. So that'll do it for us on the first day of training camp. We'll continue to cover it on a daily basis. This is where you want to be. 102.5 The Game. We're back at you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman and Company coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a wonderful and happy Tuesday, and peace.